Chapter 1241. Chao Zhang soon noticed the purple-clad young man before him had suddenly laughed upon hearing his words. The laughter sent chills down his spine. A martial emperor's direct disciple. Soon after, the laughter on Duan Lingtian's face disappeared. A hint of battle intent could be seen gleaming in the depth of his eyes. Naturally, Chao Zhang did not notice this at all. He would have been surprised if he had seen it. He believed that Duan Lingtian's strength was far stronger than most of the martial emperor's disciples in Lingzan Peak. However, he would not believe it if one was to say that he was able to win against a martial emperor's direct disciple. Meanwhile, 3 figures appeared at the lone pavilion on the stone platform situated on the higher part of Lingzan Peak's mid-mountain. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would be able to recognize with one glance that the person leading this group of 3 was none other than Lu Zhang. At this moment, Lu Zhang said faintly to the 2 people behind him, "Retreat." Yes, the 2 of them responded before leaving. After they left, Lu Zhang looked at the lone pavilion and bowed respectfully. "Senior Brother Song." The moment his words left his mouth, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of the lone pavilion. It was a young man clad in blue with a medium built and ordinary look. However, the big black mole right on top of his right brow appeared to be particularly eye-catching. "Lu Zhang, are you looking for me?" The blue-clad young man was one of Martial Emperor Lingzan's 3 direct disciples in Lingzan Peak. He was Song Ting, the 2nd direct disciple. "Senior Brother Song, I'd like you to make me the supervisor for the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that's going to be held in 3 days' time," Lu Zhang answered respectfully. He did not dare to relax in front of Song Ting. A supervisor was responsible for supervising some of the selection's activities in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that would be held 3 days later. He would mainly be supervising the group of people joining the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers and recording their results. Above the supervisor would be the judges. The judges were 2 of the Martial Emperor's direct disciples. Song Ting was one of them. Due to this reason, Song Ting had the authority to select the supervisor. "Why are you suddenly interested in this?" Song Ting asked. It was obvious he was curious about this. "Senior Brother Song, I'll be frank with you, I want to be a supervisor because I want to kill someone." Lu Zhang replied through clenched teeth. He did not have any secrets in front of Song Ting, nor did he dare to keep any secrets from him. It would not end well for him if Song Ting found out that he had hidden secrets from him. To put it nicely, he was Song Ting's right-hand man. To put it in an unpleasant way, he was only a pawn or a dog that was called at will. If he was ordered to bite somebody, he would have no choice but to bite him. As a master, if his dog suddenly bit him one day, he would definitely kill that dog without any hesitation, no matter how much he had doted on the dog. Oh, Song Ting's eyes gleamed. He became even more curious. "You're a dignified Martial Emperor's disciple. Why would you have enmity with someone who came to join the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers?" "Senior Brother Song, he killed my brother, Lu Yi," Lu Zhang replied furiously. "Lu Yi is killed by him?" Song Ting's face darkened immediately when he heard Lu Zhang's words. In Lingzan Peak, other than a few Martial Emperor's disciples and followers who remained neutral, most of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers had chosen a faction. They would either choose Song Ting, the faction of the Martial Emperor's 2nd direct disciple, or the Martial Emperor's 3rd direct disciple's faction. Both factions were against each other. Both Lu Zhang and Lu Yi belonged to Song Ting's faction. Song Ting's eyes were filled with rage when he heard a member of his faction was killed. As the saying went, you'll have to see who's the owner before you beat the dog. In his opinion, whoever dared to kill Lu Yi must have looked down on him. Song Ting's face quickly regained its calmness as he asked indifferently, "The fact that he could kill Lu Yi means that he's quite powerful. Are you sure you're able to kill him to avenge Lu Yi?" "Yes." Lu Zhang nodded vigorously. He was very confident of his own strength. Unless it was a person at the level of a Martial Emperor's direct disciple or some freaky powerhouses who had already reached the peak of the Martial Monarch stage, he had faith he could defeat them all. "Prepare yourself. 3 days later, follow me to the place where the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers will take place. I'll make you a supervisor, and at that time, you can wait for an opportunity to kill that man," Song Ting ordered. "Yes." Lu Zhang nodded his head respectfully. His eyes were shining manically. It was as though he could already see the enemy who killed his brother lying on the floor before him. Duan Lingtian was naturally unaware that Lu Zhang was planning to kill him. At this moment, he was wandering around Lingzan Peak. After staying at Lingzhan Peak for so long, this was his first time studying Lingzhan Peak in detail. The dangerously steep peak that soared up to the sky somehow gave him a completely new understanding. When I looking at this peak in front, it seems like I can comprehend the information that's hard to understand in the back of my mind a little more. I don't think it'll be long before my sword profundity makes another breakthrough again. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself. His purple robe fluttered in the wind as he hovered in the air. He was staring at the mountain peak that pointed up at the sky like a sword in the distance with utmost concentration. His eyes were fixed on it intently. At this second, the entire mountain peak seemed to have transformed into a gigantic sword in his eyes. A gigantic sword that soared all the way up to heaven. I heard from Chao Zhang that Martial Emperor Lingzhan won't be showing himself this time at the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that's held by Lingzhan Peak. 2 of the Martial Emperor's direct disciples will be in charge of it. Duan Lingtian returned to his senses. He seemed to have recalled something. I wonder if Yang Wei is one of the 2 Martial Emperor's direct disciples. Yang Wei was the person he met not too long ago at the peak of Lingzhan Peak. He remembered when he first met Yang Wei was controlling and practicing his sword using his spiritual energy. From his deduction, apart from being an inscription master, Yang Wei might be a direct disciple of Lingzhan Peak's Martial Emperor as well. Today, he went to the peak of Lingzhan Peak again, but he did not see Yang Wei this time. During this period when the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers in Lingzhan drew closer, each and every cultivation place of every Martial Emperors and Demon Emperors on every corner of Cloud Continent was bustling with activity as well. This was because their cultivation places were also holding the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. When the news of all the Martial Emperors and Demon Emperors who were active on Cloud Continent were holding the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers spread out, it created a huge commotion in almost the entire inner land. At the north of the inner land, a mountain valley was situated at an extremely cold place. It was chilly here all year round. The valley was snow-capped and misty, making it look like a fairyland. In this place that was similar to a fairyland, there was a special lake that emitted a dense aura of coldness. Although the weather was extremely cold to the point that all vegetation was frozen, the lake remained the same. The lake water glistened, unaffected by the cold. Apart from the lake, there was another highlight in this huge valley. Everyone in the valley was a female martial artist. A group of women chatted pleasantly with each other, presenting a very lively scene. In 3 days' time, the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers held by the Yuhan Valley would take place. There was a small valley at the place where Yuhan Valley received people who came to join the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. There were many beautiful silhouettes walking out from wooden houses. The entire isolated small valley was bustling. Most of them had an anticipatory yet nervous look on their faces. Only one person's face was glum and ugly. Ever since that 2 little bitches left, they did not return. Don't tell me they really have a close relationship or something with that Martial Emperor's disciple. It was an ugly woman. Just a glance was enough to make people lose their appetite. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, the ear-piercing sound of wind whistling resonated in the air. It only stopped when it reached the sky above the small valley. Everyone who had left their wooden houses in the small valley, including that ugly woman, raised their heads up to look at the sky one by one. 3 women stood side by side in the sky. A green-clad woman stood in the middle. 2 unparalleled beauties that could topple a nation with their looks stood beside her. One appeared seductive and enchanting while the other appeared obedient, gentle, and quiet. Both had their own charms. It's them. A lot of people in the small valley recognized the 2 women instantly. A lot of them also looked at the ugly woman. They recalled this ugly woman had almost killed the 2 women who were as beautiful as flowers. They felt it was a little regretful at that time when they thought the 2 women were going to die. However, who knew that the situation would suddenly change? A Martial Emperor's disciple appeared and rescued them. I remember, ever since that Martial Emperor's disciple brought them away, they did not return. Initially, I thought they might have encountered some problems. I didn't expect to see them here again. The selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that's held by Yuhan Valley will begin soon. Now that they're here, it looks like they're here for the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers too. It must be so. Then again, who's the green-clad woman? Why haven't I seen her before? As the saying went, 3 women were enough for a drama. Now that the group of women crowded together in the small valley, it appeared to be even more bustling and lively. Many people had their attention on the green-clad woman. Although that ugly woman itched to kill the two beauties who were as beautiful as flowers, she could not help but dread the mysterious green-clad woman. Junior Sister Lee, is she here? Under the watchful eyes of the others, the green-clad woman finally spoke. When she was speaking, she glanced at the seductive and enchanting woman standing next to her from the corner of her eyes. The woman was wearing a light purple clothing. She was so beautiful that she elicited an urge in the onlookers to nibble on her. The woman was none other than Li Fei. The Li Fei who had become Martial Emperor Yuhan's direct disciple. At this moment, Li Fei pointed toward the ugly woman and said, "Senior Sister Shu, it's her." Chapter 1242. When the green-clad woman called Li Fei, "Junior Sister," horror dawned on many people. When Li Fei looked at the ugly woman, everyone, including that ugly woman, began to realize what was happening. They were able to guess the reason for Li Fei's return. The green-clad woman looked at the ugly woman and asked calmly, "You're the one who almost killed Junior Sister Ka and Junior Sister Li." Although her face appeared calm, a murderous intent was hidden in her eyes. "Yes. Who are you?" The ugly woman was quite brave and nodded her head directly. At the same time, she looked at the green-clad woman in front with a glum face. She felt the green-clad woman before her was not simple. "How dare you?" At this moment, a delicate shout filled the air. Along with a white flash, a pretty white figure appeared in front of the ugly woman in just a blink of an eye. Slap! A crisp sound appeared as the ugly woman's head snapped backward. She had just been given a hard slap. The person who slapped her was the white-clad woman who had just appeared. "You!" The ugly woman returned to her senses, and her anger flared up instantly. The origin energy on her body turned chaotic, and profundity followed closely like a shadow as she prepared to attack the person who slapped her. However, the moment she saw the white-clad woman in front of her clearly, she forcibly swallowed the words she was about to say next. The person in front of her was none other than the Martial Emperor's disciple who had rescued the two women with appearances that could topple a nation whom she wanted to kill. She was so powerful that her strength was far from being comparable to hers. "Kneel down and apologize to Senior Sister Shu." The white-clad woman snarled coldly at the ugly woman. In the next instant, when the ugly woman and most of the people were in a daze, the white-clad woman looked at the green-clad woman and greeted respectfully, "Senior Sister Shu." "Senior Sister Ka, Senior Sister Li." Apart from greeting the green-clad woman respectfully, she was also very respectful and courteously greeted Ka and Li Fei as senior sisters. Perhaps Ka and Li Fei's strength was not comparable to her, but as the Martial Emperor's direct disciples, Ka and Li Fei's positions in Yuhan Valley were far higher than hers. Due to this reason, she needed to address the two women as senior sisters courteously when she saw them. When the ugly woman saw the white-clad woman greeting the green-clad woman respectfully, horror dawned on her face as an ominous feeling rose up in her heart. The moment she heard the white-clad woman greeted the two women, whom she itched to kill so she could derive pleasure from it, as senior sisters, her eyes narrowed right away. Despair immediately crept up on that ugly face. Boom! The way the white-clad woman addressed Ka and Li Fei was like a stone that set off 1,000 ripples. It took everyone present on the scene who was ready to join the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers by surprise. "Senior Sister." This Martial Emperor's disciple actually addressed these women who came here to join the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers as senior sisters. Moreover, she was so respectful that it was extremely surprising. Don't tell me that. At this moment, many people began to have an inkling about what had happened, but they did not dare to confirm it. It was because this was just too shocking. Flee. Soon after, a swift figure charged out of the small valley and attracted many people's attention. It was none other than the ugly woman. She wanted to flee since she had already guessed the identity of that green-clad woman and the current identities of the two women whom she itched to kill. Martial Emperor's direct disciple. Only a Martial Emperor's direct disciple would make the white-clad woman who was a Martial Emperor's disciple become so respectful. Humph. The green-clad woman was none other than Shu Rong, Martial Emperor Yuhan's direct disciple. As she snorted, a vast energy surged out of her body. The vast energy appeared in a flash and disappeared in a flash as well. However, at the moment between, the vast energy that disappeared as soon as it appeared moved in front of the ugly woman, knocking her backward immediately. Barf! When everyone else, apart from Shu Rong, was still in a daze, the ugly woman who was knocked back by Shu Rong's energy coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. Her face paled immediately. "She's powerful. That's too powerful. From the beginning until the end, I didn't even see her make a move." Of course, didn't you see the heaven and earth energy that dissipated the moment it appeared on her head? Many people were baffled. It looks like she really is the martial emperor's direct disciple. Although I had my suspicion, I didn't dare to believe it. Putting everything aside, just her strength alone is at the level of a martial emperor's direct disciple. I think the two women beside her must have become the martial emperor's direct disciples too. Otherwise, that martial emperor's disciple wouldn't have called them senior sisters. When Shu Rong made her move, everybody could guess her identity along with the Ka and Li Fei's current identities. Many people looked at Shu Rong with a burning gaze. Many of them looked at Ka and Li Fei with jealousy as well. Boom! Before the ugly woman even realized what was happening, Shu Rong made her move again and crippled her dantian at lightning speed. Apart from that, she had also sent her flying out. The ugly woman immediately landed in the distance with a loud bang. Her eyes were filled with despair. Junior sister Li, I've already crippled her, do the rest on your own, Shu Rong told Li Fei. Li Fei did not hesitate at all. With a raise of her hand, she thrust a palm out, and a palm print solidified in the air before it landed heavily on the ugly woman's head. Before the ugly woman regained her senses, Li Fei's palm print had already smashed on her head, killing her in a blow. From the beginning until the end, Ka did not stop Li Fei from making a move at all. Although Ka was kind, she was not blind. The ugly woman had almost killed her and her sister Ka. She deserved to die. After Li Fei killed the ugly woman, she sighed in relief. It was as though she had finally removed a heavy burden. She and Ka immediately thanked Shu Rong. Thank you, senior sister Shu. We're sisters now. There's no need to thank me. Shu Rong smiled. In the next instant, Ka, Li Fei, and Shu Rong left again. They left as quickly as they came, leaving behind only a group of women in the valley whose faces were filled with shock. It was only when the three women's figures disappeared from their sight that they finally snapped back to reality and shifted their attention to the ugly woman's body. Other than taking pleasure in her misfortune, there was not an ounce of pity at all. The action of the ugly woman in the past had long infuriated them. Now that she had died, they felt as though the sky had brightened up a little. I wonder how the two women became Martial Emperor Yuhan's direct disciples, somebody said inquisitively. At first, I thought they're merely acquainted with that Martial Emperor's disciple, but who could have known when we meet again, they've already achieved what I always longed for, many people whispered and sighed. Soon after, they voiced their speculation again. There's one thing I'm sure of, their innate talent must be quite good. Of course, otherwise, why would Martial Emperor Yuhan willingly accept them as her direct disciples? However, they would not be able to guess Martial Emperor Yuhan had accepted Ka and Li Fei as her direct disciples because of some other reason and not because of their innate talent. While the various cultivation places of martial emperors, like Lingzhan Peak and Yuhan Valley, were bustling with activities, Lost Stone Forest at the west of Cloud Continent's inner land was a different story. Originally, Lost Stone Forest was also extremely busy due to the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers. However, when a teenage girl and a little girl made their appearance, the entire Lost Stone Forest quieted down, and many people began to gather in the center of Lost Stone Forest. All this was because of the two uninvited guests in the center of Lost Stone Forest. Sister Shui Nai, don't tell me that Martial Emperor Shichi or something doesn't dare to come out. Under the watchful eyes of the others, the little girl who was dressed in white asked the yellow-clad teenage girl by her side. Her bright eyes were sparkling innocently. Upon hearing her words, the group of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers were rendered speechless. She actually said their Lord Martial Emperor of Lost Stone Forest did not dare to come out. This little girl really dared to say the damnedest thing. Upon hearing the white-clad little girl's words, the yellow-clad young girl replied at a speed that was neither too quick nor too slow. As the saying goes, the monk might run away, but the temple remains. He'll come out. It seemed like she was not anxious at all. The yellow-clad woman was none other than Han Shui Nai, who had rushed here from Lingtian sect. After she brought the white-clad little girl, Little White, with her, she continued on her journey here. The Martial Emperor's disciples and followers whom they encountered could not catch up to them at all. Naturally, many Martial Emperor's disciples and followers attacked them when they arrived. However, all of them turned into souls under their hands. Due to this reason, the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers who gathered here did not dare to attack anymore. In their opinion, the yellow-clad teenage girl who appeared to be only 15 or 16 years old and that white-clad little girl who looked no more than 10 years old were no different from a demon. Who are you? How dare you trespass into our lost stone forest? A furious voice resonated in the air. 3 figures appeared. They were none other than the 3 direct disciples under Martial Emperor Shichi of Lost Stone Forest. After they appeared, they immediately surrounded Han Shuinai and Little White. Little White, I'll leave them to you. From the very beginning until the end, Han Shuinai did not even look at the 3 people who had just appeared as though she thought they were beneath her. Naturally, Han Shuinai really thought they were beneath her. Upon hearing Han Shuinai's words, Little White's huge sparkling eyes gleamed immediately. In the next instant, she disappeared before the watchful eyes of the crowd and the 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples. Shit, an ominous feeling instantly rose up from the 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples' hearts. Horror dawned on them immediately. Not only that, but the expression on their faces was also destined to be the last expression they showed in this world, since a blood hole appeared on their throats in the next instant. All 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples died. Chapter 1243. The scene took all the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers of Lost Stone Forest who rushed here by surprise. Many people even began to rub their eyes vigorously as though they wanted to make sure their eyes did not deceive them. In just a blink of an eye, the 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples were killed by the harmless-looking white-clad little girl who did not look older than 10 years old. Soon after, colors drained from the faces of some onlookers. Some even cried out loud in surprise, "What? They're the Martial Emperor's direct disciples." These people came here to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that was going to be held by Lost Stone Forest. At first, they only wanted to join in the fun and see what the consequences were for trespassing into Lost Stone Forest. Who knew they would witness this scene that would be forever etched in their minds? The moment the little girl who did not look older than 10 years old vanished from her spot, a bloody hole appeared on all the 3 huge young and middle-aged men's throat before they died. Such a scene was extremely shocking to them. Although they were in shock, they did not feel that it was inconceivable. After all, in their opinion, that little girl might be a powerful demon who had transformed into a human. Her real age might even rival their grandmother's age. However, the moment they learned of the identities of the 3 men who were killed from the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers, they were all horrified and dumbfounded. The 3 men who were killed were the Martial Emperor's direct disciples. They were here to join the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers, so they naturally had quite an understanding of the term, Martial Emperor's direct disciples. A Martial Emperor's direct disciple was usually a genius who had yet to flourish, someone overflowing with talent, or someone at the peak of the Martial Monarch stage and had strength that surpassed most people below the Martial Emperor stage. However, today, those 3 people had been killed by a little girl, whom they suspected was a demon who had transformed into a human, before they even realized what was happening. Updated by Box Novel. Com. A demon emperor. She must be a demon emperor. She killed 3 Martial Emperor's direct disciples in just a blink of an eye. She must be an emperor stage powerhouse. Oh, gosh, why would a demon emperor trespass into our Lost Stone Forest and kill 3 of the Martial Emperor's direct disciples? From their exchange earlier, it seems like they're here for Lord Martial Emperor. Could it be they're actually enemies of Lord Martial Emperor? Many Martial Emperor's disciples and followers and those people who came to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers buried their heads together in discussion. It was extremely lively. The eyes they used to look at the white-clad little girl in the distance had completely changed as well. Why isn't Lord Martial Emperor here yet? Some of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers were perplexed. They believed their Lost Stone Forest's Lord Martial Emperor should have already learned about what happened here. At this moment, when some of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers' minds were filled with thousands of questions, a voice that seemed to resonate from all directions entered everyone's ear. Who are you? Why did you trespass into my Lost Stone Forest and kill 3 of my direct disciples? A figure appeared before the crowd along with the slightly glum voice. Based on his words, it was clear who it was that had spoken. Martial Emperor Shichi. The moment this person appeared, Han Shuinai and Little White shifted their attention to him immediately, raising their eyebrows. Han Shuinai asked calmly, "Martial Emperor Shichi?" "That's right, I'm Martial Emperor Shichi." Martial Emperor Shichi's piercing eyes gleamed. He was completely consumed with flames of fury. He only had 5 direct disciples. One of them had deceived him and fled after stealing his thing. Currently, another 3 were dead. This meant he was only left with 1 direct disciple. To be honest, he was not particularly concerned about the life and death of his direct disciples. However, he cared a lot about his prestige and image. If the other martial emperors and demon emperors knew that 4 out of 5 direct disciples under his, martial emperor Shi-Chi, command were dead, they would definitely burst out laughing. Don't you think the two of you owe me a compensation since you trespassed into my lost stone forest and killed my direct disciples? Martial Emperor Shi-Chi asked in a deep voice. Since the white-clad little girl was able to kill 3 of his direct disciples so quickly, it meant that she was an emperor stage powerhouse. The other yellow-clad teenage girl who seemed like the leader of the duo was most likely stronger than the white-clad little girl. Due to this reason, he felt that these 2 people must be emperor stage powerhouses. Moreover, they had to be demon emperors too. Compensation. Before Han Shui-Nai opened her mouth, Little White snorted before she smirked. Don't you think you should compensate me for asking me to compensate you? Since Martial Emperor Shi-Chi was quite certain the white-clad little girl was a demon emperor, he did not dare to underestimate her even though she looked young. He asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean?" "What do we mean?" This time, it was Han Shui-Nai who smirked instead. "You're Martial Emperor Shi-Chi, right? Did I hear that more than 6 months ago, your direct disciple named Zhou Yi or something snatched away my brother Ling Tian's woman? And we haven't heard from my brother Ling Tian ever since he came to your lost stone forest. Today, if you don't give me an explanation, I'll send you to the other world to accompany your 3 direct disciples." When Han Shui-Nai reached the end of her sentence, a piercing light appeared in her bright eyes as though she was about to devour a certain somebody. Zhou Yi, brother Ling Tian's woman. At this moment, Martial Emperor Shi-Chi had an inkling about what was happening. He finally understood this yellow-clad teenage girl and white-clad little girl's intention. It was all for the sake of that purple-clad young man who caused a ruckus in his lost stone forest more than 6 months ago. The moment he thought of that purple-clad young man, he was instantly consumed with irritation. Until now, when he recalled the scene that took place more than 6 months ago, he was still consumed with a lingering fear. That purple-clad young man who possessed a horrifying strength with the help of that mysterious stone tablet had almost killed him. That was the biggest crisis he had ever faced ever since he broke through to the Martial Emperor stage. If it was not for the purple-clad young man's sudden departure, he would not be standing here. Zhou Yi again. The moment Martial Emperor Shi-Chi recalled this incident, he thought of Zhou Yi again. He gnashed his teeth in hatred. In his opinion, this incident was caused by Zhou Yi. If Zhou Yi did not snatch the purple-clad young man's woman away, there would not be so many incidents that happened one after another. What was worst was the fact that Zhou Yi had deceived him and switched the mysterious stone tablet that the purple-clad young man left behind. This was no doubt the biggest provocation he had ever encountered. Martial Emperor Shi-Chi felt irritated again the second he thought about Zhou Yi, who was now hidden somewhere, studying that stone tablet. Although Martial Emperor Shi-Chi knew what happened, he naturally would not obediently disclose everything to Han Shui-Nai. He snorted before he snapped in irritation, "Humph. I don't know what you're talking about." Chapter 1244. All I know is you killed 3 of my direct disciples. Today, you'll have to compensate me. Moreover, the compensation has to satisfy me. Martial Emperor Shi-Chi said loudly. When he reached the end of his sentence, his eyes shone brightly. Upon hearing Martial Emperor Shi-Chi's words, disdain could be seen in the depth of Han Shui-Nai's gaze. At the same time, she asked curiously, "I wonder what kind of compensation you want from us. You killed 3 of my direct disciples and caused a heavy loss to my lost stone forest. You 2 must be demon emperors. Make an oath using the 9 heavenly tribulation and swear 30 years of servitude to me." Martial Emperor Shi-Chi answered. This was the compensation he wanted. Although he suspected the yellow-clad teenage girl and white-clad little girl before him were both demon emperors, he did not think they were powerful enough to defeat him. He was a 4th-level martial emperor after all. His strength could be considered as above average among all the martial emperors and demon emperors on Cloud Continent. In his opinion, these 2 demon emperors were very likely no match for him. This was because he knew all the demon emperors who were stronger than him on Cloud Continent, and these 2 standing before him were not among them. 30 years of servitude. Han Shui-Nai and Little White were stunned when they heard Martial Emperor Shi-Chi's words. As for the group of onlookers, all their eyes brightened immediately, regardless if they were the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers or the people who came to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. Updated by Box.com. In their opinion, they would have a good show to watch soon. Do you think Lord Martial Emperor would be able to subjugate them for 30 years? I guess so. I can see that Lord Martial Emperor is very confident. Although he knows these two are demon emperors, he's not scared at all. If Lord Marshal Emperor really manages to subjugate them, we'll have 2 additional demon emperors in our Lost Stone Forest. I'm a little excited just thinking about it. Many Marshal Emperor's disciples and followers felt a little excited. I can't believe we get to see Marshal Emperor Shichi before the selection of the Marshal Emperor's disciples and followers even begins. I've long heard that Marshal Emperor Shichi is at the 3rd level Marshal Emperor stage. So many years have passed, he might have already broken through to the 4th level Marshal Emperor stage. He must have already broken through, otherwise, he wouldn't be so confident in front of those 2 who might be demon emperors. The participants of the selection of the Marshal Emperor's disciples and followers held by Lost Stone Forest had a discussion among themselves. They were confident in Marshal Emperor Shichi's strength. Little White, somebody wants us to subjugate ourselves to him for 30 years, Han Shuinai said as she looked at Little White. She was the first to return to her senses. Well then, let's see if he has the ability or not. Upon hearing that, Little White's bright eyes shone coldly as she looked at Marshal Emperor Shichi. Although her tone was calm, a murderous intent was hidden in it. Marshal Emperor Shichi did not respond to Little White's provocation. Instead, he said, I'll let you know if I have that ability or not. Very soon, you'll tremble under my strength and will willingly swear 30 years of servitude to me. In that case, I'll play with you, Little White replied nonchalantly. It's my pleasure, Marshal Emperor Shichi answered nonchalantly as well. The moment the words left his mouth, the robe on his body fluttered as he emitted waves of blood-curdling aura. It caused most of the onlookers to take a few steps back. Some people with lower cultivation base were even forced to retreat far behind. A Marshal Emperor's strength was just too strong. It was so strong that it sent chills down one's spine. As for Little White, she did not seem like she was afraid of the aura that Marshal Emperor Shichi emitted. It was as though she did not feel anything at all. Whoosh, whoosh. Marshal Emperor Shichi and the white-clad little girl vanished on the spot at lightning speed from the eyes of most people present on the scene. They could only hear the distinct sound of wind whistling that disappeared as soon as it appeared. Boom, 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 Before they even realized what was happening, they heard a series of deafening explosions that reverberated in the air. They did not even have a chance to squint their eyes to have look when a flurry of hurricanes swept out and sent them flying like arrows leaving its bow. Only the Marshal Emperor's disciples stayed rooted to their spots, squinting their eyes. Boom! The group of Marshal Emperor's followers and disciples and more than 90% of the participants of the selection of the Marshal Emperor's disciples and followers looked extremely wretched. Suddenly, another explosion resonated in the air and an even more terrifying hurricane swept out. This time, even the Marshal Emperor's disciples were sent flying. As for the others, their condition worsened. They were pale and bleeding profusely. Some were even sent flying out of everyone's sight. For a moment, other than the 2 people who created the storm, only Han Shuinai remained in the center of the storm. Although the storm raged furiously, she remained unmoved and stable like a mountain. Barf! When the group of Marshal Emperor's disciples who were awfully pale managed to stabilize themselves, they heard the sound of someone throwing up. They squinted and looked toward the center of the storm just in time to witness Marshal Emperor Shichi throwing up blood. After he was done throwing up, his face turned horribly pale and the hand that was holding the 7-foot-long spear was trembling non-stop. It was apparent that Marshal Emperor Shichi had used the quasi-royal grade spirit spear in his hand earlier. However, he was still defeated in the end. As for the white-clad little girl who stood in front of him with a short dagger, she was merely breathing a little heavily. Apart from the few drops of sweat on her forehead, she looked no different from before. The difference in their strength could be seen from this. Lord Marshal Emperor is defeated. The group of Marshal Emperor's disciples was stunned and baffled. The Lord Marshal Emperor who was like an undefeatable god in their minds had actually been defeated. When the group of Marshal Emperor's disciples was still stunned and the remaining people were still confused, Marshal Emperor Shichi looked at the white-clad little girl with a pale face before he asked with dread, "Who are you exactly?" However, Little White did not answer him. Instead, she merely asked nonchalantly, "So, do you still want us to give you an explanation and swear 30 years of servitude to you?" Little White's pointed words were extremely unpleasant to hear. It caused Marshal Emperor Shichi to turn even paler when he heard it. It was like a slap to his own face. A blatant slap to his own face. This was everyone's thoughts. At this moment, the group of Marshal Emperor's followers and other people began to regain their senses. All of them were staring at the scene before them in confusion. The owner of Lost Stone Forest, Martial Emperor Shi-Chi, was defeated in this battle. Moreover, he seemed to be injured as well. Just tell me, what happened to my brother Ling Tian after he came to your Lost Stone Forest? Where's he now? Han Shuinai asked again as she looked at Martial Emperor Shi-Chi. Chapter 1245, Chapter 1246, The 10 Great Saint Weapons Rankings. Martial Emperor Shi-Chi's mind went completely blank. His mind kept replaying the scene from earlier. Even after he used his full strength and his quasi-royal grade spirit spear against the white-clad little girl who looked no older than 10 years old, he was still defeated. At this moment, he realized this white-clad little girl was not only a demon emperor, but she was also a demon emperor who was more powerful than him. Moreover, this demon emperor was here for the sake of the purple-clad young man. Didn't you hear my older sister Shuinai's questions? When the childish voice that was filled with iciness entered Martial Emperor Shi-Chi's ears, he regained his senses and was hit by a pang of realization. Naturally, he was no stranger to this voice. It was the voice of the white-clad little girl who had defeated him. He immediately looked at the yellow-clad teenage girl standing nearby with a horrified expression. Only fear could be seen in his eyes now. What a joke! This white-clad little girl was already far more powerful than him. He strongly suspected the yellow-clad teenage girl whom she addressed as older sister might be even more powerful than her. Please say it again, Martial Emperor said to Han Shuinai fearfully. From his tone, compared to his previous aggressive and overbearing manner, he seemed to have transformed into another person. Naturally, this was because he did not know the white-clad little girl's strength earlier. Otherwise, he would not have acted that way. The strong ones ruled on Cloud Continent. Even if he was a martial emperor who was usually high and mighty in front of ordinary martial artists, he would still have to be humble when he encountered someone more powerful than him. The difficulty that a martial emperor went through was far from being comparable to an ordinary martial artist. Due to this reason, they would be willing to do all kinds of crazy things in order to survive, let alone admitting defeat. Han Shuinai glanced at Martial Emperor Shi-Chi coldly and repeated her words again in annoyance. Upon hearing it, Martial Emperor did not dare to slack and quickly replied. He began to recount what had happened the day he met Duan Ling Tian, how Duan Ling Tian had obtained strength that was comparable to his through the mysterious stone tablet and even how they fought each other. He did not dare to hide anything as he recounted the incident. He recounted everything in detail, including how Duan Ling Tian lost his sanity and left while Feng Tianwu was brought away by someone else. How Zhou Yi, his direct disciple, had deceived him before he took that stone tablet away with him. Right now, he no longer cared about his prestige and image. Nothing was more important than his life. He did not dare to lie. It was too risky. If these two young misses were not happy with his story, they might just kill him in a bad mood. At that time, what was gained would not be able to make up for what was lost. Stone tablet. It made big brother Ling Tian lost his sanity. Frowning, Han Shuinai looked at Martial Emperor Shi-Chi and said, "Describe that stone tablet to me now." Han Shuinai had her own suspicion regarding the mysterious stone that could make its user lose his sanity and possess horrifying strength, but she was not entirely certain about it. If it's really the Devilseal tablet, then I'm afraid brother Ling Tian is in a bad situation. While interrogating Martial Emperor Shi-Chi, Han Shuinai's heart jolted, and it was filled with worries. In the face of Han Shuinai's query, Martial Emperor Shi-Chi did not dare to slack. He quickly described every characteristic of that stone tablet that he knew. It's weird actually, that stone tablet lacks a corner. It really is the Devilseal tablet. The moment Martial Emperor Shi-Chi finished his words, Han Shuinai's face turned a little glum. How can this be so coincidental? The Devilseal tablet is coincidentally in brother Ling Tian's hand. Han Shuinai could still remember that time when she first came to Cloud Continent with Qing Nu. Apart from coming here to relax and travel, Qing Nu was actually here on her father's order to search for the Devilseal tablet. It was because her father had received news that the Devilseal tablet was on Cloud Continent, the mortal continent. At first, she thought she was merely a passing traveler on Cloud Continent, but who would have ever thought that she would meet her brother Ling Tian and 3 other little guys who were extraordinarily talented. Due to this reason, she had formed an indissoluble bond here on Cloud Continent. That time, Qing Nu spent a few years searching every corner of Cloud Continent, but she still wasn't able to find the Devilseal tablet. I can't believe it's actually in brother Ling Tian's hand. At this moment, Han Shuinai's feeling was very complicated. At the same time, she was worried about Duan Ling Tian too. She knew very well just how horrifying that Devilseal tablet was. Did you say my brother Ling Tian left after leaving that stone tablet behind? Han Shuinai asked again. Yes. Martial Emperor Shiqi did not dare to slack as he quickly nodded his head in reply. Not only did he not retrieve the stone tablet, but he didn't even bring his woman along with him. How can you prove that all you said is true? Han Shuinai subconsciously narrowed her eyes as she stared at Martial Emperor Shiqi. Her eyes were gleaming coldly. When Martial Emperor Shiqi saw the coldness in Han Shuinai's eyes, his heart turned cold. He hastily took an oath and swore by the Tribulation Oath, the 99 Heavenly Tribulation. I, Martial Emperor Shiqi, swear by the 99 Heavenly Tribulation, if what I said earlier contains even a tiny bit of lie, I'm willing to be struck to death by lightning. Boom, 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 comma. In just a blink of an eye, 9 thunderous sounds resonated in the air, corresponding to Martial Emperor Shiqi's oath. Taking an oath using the Tribulation Oath, the 99 Heavenly Tribulation, even a Martial Emperor would not be able to defy it. Otherwise, he would also be struck by lightning to death. Since Martial Emperor Shiqi dared to make such an oath, it meant he did not lie earlier. Duan Ling Tian did indeed leave behind the Devilseal tablet, and that tablet was stolen by Zhou Yi, his direct disciple, by means of deceit. Feng Tianwu, on the other hand, was brought away by a powerhouse named Kai Huo. After making his oath, Martial Emperor Shiqi sighed in relief. Thank goodness he had the ability to read the situation and did not lie. Otherwise, he would not have survived. You better pray that nothing happens to my brother Ling Tian, otherwise, I'll completely annihilate your lost stone forest. After casting a cold glance at Martial Emperor Shiqi, Han Shuinai's body moved and disappeared from Martial Emperor Shiqi's eyes at an extremely swift speed. From the beginning until the end, Martial Emperor Shiqi did not even see Han Shuinai's figure clearly at all. As expected, her strength is indeed stronger than the white-clad little girl. Martial Emperor Shiqi discreetly wiped his cold sweat away. At the same time, he anxiously looked at the white-clad little girl standing nearby anxiously. He was afraid this young miss would not let the matter go. Humph! Little White snorted coldly before she followed Han Shuinai and left. Only then did Martial Emperor Shiqi heave a sigh of relief as though a burden had been lifted off him. Soon after, Little White caught up to Han Shuinai, who had decreased her speed, before asking, Sister Shuinai, since he wanted to kill brother previously, why didn't you kill him earlier? Don't you think it'll be better to leave him alive and let brother Ling Tian avenge himself? Han Shuinai asked. A pang of realization hit Little White instantly. Then, it seemed like she had recalled something and she asked worriedly, but, what if, brother is? Little White did not continue, but the meaning was obvious. If something really happened to brother Ling Tian, I'll annihilate his entire lost stone forest. No matter where he, Martial Emperor Shiqi, hides, I'll search for him and kill him. Little White's words were like a blasting fuse that fully ignited Han Shuinai this powder cask. I'm sure brother will be all right, Little White muttered. I hope so too, Han Shuinai nodded, but her eyes were filled with worries. According to Martial Emperor Shiqi's description, she could roughly guess what her brother Ling Tian had gone through. Brother Ling Tian had forcefully drawn the soul remnant energy from the Devilseal tablet into his body and devilified in one fell swoop. From there, he managed to possess extraordinary strength. However, after he was devilified, he lost his sanity. Right now, all I hope is that was his first time using the Devilseal tablet. Otherwise, things will really be troublesome. Han Shuinai was most worried about this. When a person used the Devilseal tablet for the first time, it would have some side effects, but not to the extent where it would threaten his life. However, if one kept using it, the side effects would consume his life. Although the person's physical body was still alive, it would only be an empty shell at most. An empty shell that was controlled by the soul remnant energy from the Devilseal tablet. Sister Shuinai, I heard you mentioned the Devilseal tablet or something earlier. Could the mysterious stone tablet that Martial Emperor Shiqi mentioned be the Devilseal tablet you mentioned? Soon after, Little White recalled Han Shuinai's words. Although she did not speak loudly, she was still heard by Little White. That's right, it's the Devilseal tablet, Han Shuinai nodded. Little White learned about many things after listening to Martial Emperor Shiqi's story. Curious, she asked, what exactly is that Devilseal tablet? How could it allow brother to possess such a strong energy in such a short time? Not only that, the side effects seem to be quite severe too. The Devilseal Tablet is one of the 10 Great Saint Weapons according to the Tao Martial Saint Land's 10 Great Saint Weapons rankings, Han Shui-Nai explained. What? Upon hearing this, Little White was shocked. It's said that the weapons on the Tao Martial Saint Land's 10 Great Saint Weapons rankings are all Super Saint weapons. They are extremely rare and precious treasures. If an ordinary person obtains it, it'll be enough for him to roam the Tao Martial Saint Land with ease. However, that's only when they are deified. Even if the saint weapon is very powerful, it won't be able to fully display its power if the person controlling it is weak. However, apart from the Devilseal Tablet, the boost in offensive power that the other Super Saint weapons in the 10 Great Saint Weapon rankings grants to martial artists is far greater than ordinary saint weapons, Han Shui-Nai continued. Why apart from the Devilseal Tablet? Isn't the Devilseal Tablet a Super Saint weapon as well? Little White asked curiously. The Devilseal Tablet became a Super Saint weapon and is listed in the 10 Great Saint Weapon rankings, not because of the offensive power boost that it grants a martial artist. Actually, the offensive power boost that it grants is far less compared to many other ordinary saint weapons. The reason it became a Super Saint weapon and is listed in the 10 Great Saint Weapon rankings is due to its surprising ability. It can suppress devil cultivators. Han Shui-Nai continued to explain. When she reached the end of her sentence, a hint of respect could be seen in her eyes. Chapter 1246. The Devilseal Tablet had always been a legend in the Tao Martial Saint Land. It was also the variant in the 10 Great Saint Weapon rankings. If the Devilseal Tablet was used to deal with a devil cultivator, it would be able to suppress the devil cultivator. It would get the job done with only half the effort. However, if the Devilseal Tablet was used against an ordinary martial or Tao cultivator, it would not be as effective as most ordinary saint weapons even though the Devilseal Tablet could be considered as an offensive saint weapon. After finding out about the use of the Devilseal Tablet from Han Shui-Nai, Little White could not help but gasp in surprise. When she learned about the side effects of the Devilseal Tablet, about how a person would lose his sanity completely and become a zombie after using the Devilseal Tablet multiple times, she could not help but feel worried about Duan Ling Tian. Sister Shui-Nai, brother will be okay, right? Little White had a worried expression on her face, and her big sparkling eyes appeared to be very pitiful. Don't worry, blessed are the good men. Brother Ling Tian will be all right. Han Shui-Nai smiled as she reassured her. Although she told Little White not to worry, she was actually worried since she had no idea how many times her brother Ling Tian had used the Devilseal Tablet. If she knew that her brother Ling Tian had used the Devilseal Tablet 3 times, she would not have felt so optimistic. Updated by Box Novel. Com. The most important thing right now is to find brother Ling Tian, Han Shui-Nai said. Little White nodded before she and Han Shui-Nai proceeded to fly toward the direction where Martial Emperor Shi-Chi said Duan Ling Tian had left in. They intended to look for traces of Duan Ling Tian to find him. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian was naturally unaware that somebody was worried about him and was looking for him everywhere. In Lingzan Peak, the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers continued as planned. The selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers that was going to be held by Lingzan Peak would be carried out on a vast stone platform situated at the mid-mountain of Lingzan Peak. This stone platform was so vast that the small stone platform that housed the residential area could not compare to it all. The area it occupied was extremely huge. Early in the morning, many people had appeared above the vast stone platform. They were either the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers from Lingzan Peak or people who came to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers held by Lingzan Peak. Somehow, the originally noisy and bustling atmosphere turned completely quiet the moment a figure appeared. It's Senior Brother Song Ting. Senior Brother Song Ting is here. After it had quietened down, a commotion broke out again. Many Martial Emperor's disciples and followers were staring at the person who came from afar excitedly. Their eyes were filled with excitement as though they had just seen an idol they admired very much. Song Ting, who's Song Ting? He doesn't seem like an ordinary person. Those people who came to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers had no idea who Song Ting was at all. A person who could elicit such respect from the group of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers naturally would have a high position. Don't tell me he's actually one of the Martial Emperor's 3 great disciples in Lingzan Peak. Someone opined. Many people agreed with him as well. That has to be it. Although this group of people agreed with him, they could not help but ask the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers standing close to them. It was as though they would only feel at ease if they had direct confirmation. That's right. He's the second disciple of our Lingzan Peak's Lord Martial Emperor, Song Ting. Senior brother Song Ting isn't only the Martial Emperor's direct disciple, but he's also one of the two great judges for the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers held by our Lingzan Peak today. Many Martial Emperor's disciples and followers responded. Although they had already somewhat guessed it earlier, after they confirmed Song Ting's identity with the group of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers, many people still exclaimed in shock with looks of admiration on their faces. The Martial Emperor's direct disciple. This was a person they looked up to. When Song Ting appeared, two people appeared behind him like shadows. Lu Zhang. With just a glance, Duan Lingtian who stood in the crowd immediately identified one of the people standing behind Song Ting. It was none other than the Martial Emperor's disciple who tried to pick a fight with him but was thwarted by Cao Zhang in the end. Lu Zhang was the older blood brother of the muggers, leader whom he had killed before coming to Lingzan Peak. When Duan Lingtian killed the muggers, leader, he did not know he was also the Martial Emperor's disciple. Naturally, he would not have shown mercy even if he knew. When Duan Lingtian noticed Lu Zhang, he also saw him. When Lu Zhang saw Duan Lingtian, his eyes immediately turned red. It was as though he had transformed into a vicious beast lurking in the dark, ready to pounce and kill at any given time. He's the one who killed Lu Yi. Although Song Ting was not looking at Lu Zhang, it seemed as though he had eyes at the back of his head since he instantly noticed something was not right with Lu Zhang. He immediately looked in the direction where Lu Zhang was looking at. Soon after, his eyes landed on Duan Lingtian. Yes, Lu Zhang gnashed his teeth in response. The eyes that were glaring at Duan Lingtian almost bulged out of his sockets. He itched to swallow Duan Lingtian whole. However, Duan Lingtian was not bothered about Lu Zhang at all. He thought nothing of Lu Zhang. He was looking into Song Ting's eyes that were looking at him as well. It was as though the slightest thing would spark a fire. However, not long after Duan Lingtian and Song Ting's eyes met, Song Ting quickly retracted his gaze. It was as though he found it beneath him to exchange glances with Duan Lingtian. He completely looked down on Duan Lingtian. Martial Emperor's direct disciple, Duan Lingtian's gaze contained a strong hint of battle intent when he looked at Song Ting. Unfortunately, Song Ting did not notice that. Senior brother Zhang En. Senior brother Zhang En, Soon after, a series of courteous greeting resonated and attracted Duan Lingtian's attention. Duan Lingtian discovered another young man in his 30s was making his way here in the company of another two men. From the exchanges of the group of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers in his surroundings, Duan Lingtian discovered the young man's identity. Zhang En, the third direct disciple under Martial Emperor Lingzan's command. 2 days ago, Duan Lingtian had learned about the situation in Lingzan Peak from Cao Zhang. He knew that Lingzan Peak was divided into two factions. These two factions were led by the two Martial Emperor's direct disciples under Martial Emperor Lingzan's command. Today, he finally saw the leaders of the two factions. Song Ting, the Martial Emperor's second direct disciple. Zhang En, the Martial Emperor's third direct disciple. At first, I thought the one named Yang Wei is either the second or third Martial Emperor's direct disciple, but it seems like I'm wrong. A silhouette appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. The scene of the young man using his spiritual energy to wield the sword at the peak of Lingzan Peak was still vivid in his mind. Don't tell me Yang Wei is actually the Martial Emperor's first direct disciple who's always secretive with his movements and whereabouts just like Martial Emperor Lingzan according to Cao Zhang. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The more he thought about it, the more he found it plausible. Chapter 1247. Duan Lingtian. Soon after, a familiar voice rang by Duan Lingtian's ears. He did not need to look, he knew who the owner of the voice was. It was none other than Nangong Yi who came to Lingzan Peak to participate in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. There were two faint sounds of wind whistling approaching him. He could easily guess that Nangong Chen was with Nangong Yi as well. You're here, Duan Lingtian nodded slightly. After Nangong Yi appeared behind Duan Lingtian, his gaze unconsciously landed on Lu Zhang who was standing behind Song Ting in the distance. He asked with dread in his voice, Duan Lingtian, did Lu Zhang look for you? Yes, he did. Duan Lingtian nodded in response to Nangong Yi's question. Did you win him? Nangong Yi asked, surprised. We didn't battle. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Although Lu Zhang did look for him, he did not attack him all. Due to this reason, there was no winner or loser. Didn't battle? Nangong Yi was surprised. In fact, when Lu Zhang came to find him, he was furious. If it was not because Lu Zhang was wary of the fact that he was a participant of the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers and he was not the real killer, Lu Zhang would have attacked him immediately. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, was different. Lu Zhang's younger blood brother had died directly in Duan Lingtian's hands. By right, Lu Zhang would not let him go so easily. Are you confident in going against him? Nangong Yi did not ask for the reason, he was more curious about this matter. Although Duan Lingtian had killed Lu Yi, Lu Zhang's younger brother who was a martial emperor's disciple, his attack at that time was sudden and took his opponent by surprise. If Lu Yi had been prepared, it would have been almost impossible for Duan Lingtian to kill him. After all, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was just too low. The strength boost that his spirit weapon could grant was just too limited. Lu Yi had died due to his own recklessness. If it was the Duan Lingtian from 6 months ago, Nangong Yi was certain he would not win if he went against Lu Zhang, the martial emperor's disciple, who was stronger than his younger brother, Lu Yi. Among all the martial emperor's disciples, his strength was in the top 3. However, 6 months had gone by. He had no idea how much Duan Lingtian had raised his cultivation base. Due to this reason, he did not carelessly come to a conclusion. After all, it only took Duan Lingtian a month to restore his cultivation base to the first-level void interpretation stage from the first-level core formation stage previously. 6 months had gone by. Just how much did Duan Lingtian restore his cultivation base? He had no clue at all. Confident. When Duan Lingtian heard Nangong Yi's question, he was momentarily stunned before he smiled faintly. His smile was so mysterious that it made Nangong Yi feel even more curious. Nangong Yi could not suppress his curiosity and ask again, "What? You're confident?" However, Duan Lingtian still did not answer him, causing him to feel a little frustrated. In the distance, Song Ting and Zhang En, the martial emperor's second and third direct disciples in Lingzan Peak, gathered together. This was a sign that the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers of Lingzan Peak was about to begin. Song Ting and Zhang En were the two great judges for the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers today. Naturally, apart from the two who were the judges, there was another group of martial emperor's disciples who would work together with them in the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers. As the supervisors today, the group of martial emperor's disciples would supervise the selection today. Third junior brother, it has been a long time since I last saw you, Song Ting greeted Zhang En with a smile. Those who did not know any better would really think that he and Zhang En had a good brotherly relationship with each other. After all, they were both apprentices to the same master. That's right, it has been such a long time, second senior brother, Zhang En responded faintly. A smile could be seen on his face as well. However, the smile did not reach his eyes. A hint of hostility gleamed in the depth of both their eyes. Since we're both here, should we begin the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers? Song Ting asked. Yeah, let's begin. Zhang En nodded. He glanced at the surroundings before announcing loudly, all the martial artists who are participating in the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers today, descend on the stone platform below. The first selection will begin in 15 minutes. The moment Zhang An's words spread out, a group of people descended one after another like dumplings being dropped down on the vast stone platform. Duan Lingtian and the Nangong brothers did not join the crowd. It was only until the crowd descending began to thin that they descended. They landed on the side of the stone platform firmly and waited for the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers to begin. Not long after Duan Lingtian and the two others landed, an annoying voice resonated in the air. His voice was filled with mockery. Tisk tisk, Nangong Chen, they're your companions. A middle-aged man who was dressed in a silver robe appeared before the three of them. From the beginning until the end, he did not look at Nangong Chen at all. His gaze was firmly fixed on Duan Lingtian and Nangong Yi instead. I've not seen the two of them before. I guess this means their cultivation base must be below the 7th level martial monarch stage. A mocking smile appeared on the silver-robed middle-aged man's face when he reached the end of his sentence. Based on his words, it was obvious that he had stayed at the same place with Nangong Chen for his cultivation during these 6 months. When Duan Lingtian and the other two first arrived in Lingzan Peak, each of them had been arranged to stay in different cultivation places. Duan Lingtian, whose cultivation base was below the 4th level martial monarch stage, was assigned to one place. Nangong Yi, whose cultivation base was above the 4th level but below the 7th level martial monarch stage, had been assigned to another place. And Nangong Chen, whose cultivation base was above the 7th level martial monarch stage, had been assigned to another place away from Duan Lingtian and Nangong Yi. Since the silver-robed middle-aged man was assigned to the same place as Nangong Chen, it meant that his cultivation base was at the 7th level martial monarch stage 6 months ago. Moreover, since he dared to ignore Nangong Chen in such way and blatantly provoked Duan Lingtian and Nangong Yi in front of him, it meant that he did not fear him. His strength must be at least on par with Nangong Chen, or he might be even stronger. Nangong Chen, who usually did not talk much, had an aloof expression on his face as he snarled loudly, "Scram!" When Nangong Chen snarled at the silver-robed middle-aged man, his face turned grave immediately. He glared at Nangong Chen and snapped loudly, "Nangong Chen, let's hope none of your companions faces me in the selection later, otherwise, I'll beat them to death until they don't even have an intact body to be buried." The silver-robed middle-aged man's piercing eyes shone as though he was about to devour somebody when he reached the end of his sentence. "Well, we'll have to see if you have that ability to beat us until there are no bodies left to be buried." Nangong Yi, who was initially clueless, snorted when he heard the silver-robed middle-aged man's words. Only Duan Lingtian remained silent from the beginning until the end. He merely cast a cold glance at the silver-robed middle-aged man before retracting his gaze again. An unnoticeable killing intent flashed in the depth of his eyes. "You'll soon find out if I have that ability or not. Even Nangong Chen doesn't dare to guarantee that he can win me, let alone a little boy like you who haven't even entered the 7th level martial monarch stage. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as stepping on an ant." Upon hearing Nangong Yi's words, the silver-robed middle-aged man continued to mock him. Finally, he left under Nangong Yi's furious gaze and stood at the side. Nangong Yi retracted his gaze and instantly looked at Nangong Chen before he asked, "Nangong Chen, you can't defeat him." "We're well matched," Nangong Chen replied nonchalantly, taciturn as always. "No wonder he's so mad and dares to provoke you, Duan Lingtian, and me." Nangong Yi snorted. "However, it's okay for him to provoke you and me, but how dare he provoke Duan Lingtian? He really wants to die." When Nangong Yi reached the end of his sentence, he looked at Duan Lingtian and saw that Duan Lingtian was calm. It was as though he was not infuriated by the silver-robed middle-aged man's provocation. Nangong Yi immediately felt slightly disappointed. To Duan Lingtian, the incident with the silver-robed middle-aged man's was just a minor issue. He had forgotten about it quickly. 15 minutes quickly passed by. 15 minutes have gone by. The first selection is going to begin soon. I wonder what it's going to be. We'll soon find out, many people whispered among each other. They were nervous and filled with anticipation in regards to the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers. There were no more than 10 people, including Duan Lingtian, who could remain calm. Even Nangong Yi looked glum as he waited attentively for the first round of the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers to begin. Updated by Box Novel. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Song Ting and Zhang and flew out at the same time and arrived at the sky above Duan Lingtian and the others. They did not say anything for a long time as they hovered in the air. What's going on? What are they trying to do now? When the crowd was still puzzling over the situation, Song Ting and Zhang and finally made their moves. Their bodies moved slightly, and a tremendous wave of aura surged out of their bodies. The aura belonged to a powerhouse who had reached the peak of the martial monarch stage, spread toward Duan Lingtian and the others. It was not simply a matter of 1+1 when the auras of the two powerhouses who had reached the peak of the martial monarch stage merged. The aura enveloped the ground, everyone became shaky apart from Duan Lingtian and several dozens of people. Boom! Soon after, some people could no longer endure it. With a slam, they fell on the ground on their backs, and their faces were utterly grave. Boom! 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 In the next instant, more and more people fell. The people who fell first were mostly from the same cultivation place as Duan Lingtian. They were all martial artists below the 4th level martial monarch stage. They could not endure the auras from the two powerhouses who had reached the peak of the martial monarch stage that enveloped them. Soon after, apart from Duan Lingtian, everyone from the same cultivation place as him for the past 6 months fell to the ground. They were all eliminated. They're all trash. Song Ting snorted in disdain as he looked at the scene from above. This is also because our Lingzhan Peak didn't set a requirement for the participants of the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers this time, otherwise, they wouldn't have the qualifications to participate at all. However, it seems like they've bitten off more than they can chew even if they successfully came here, Zhang An chimed in nonchalantly. He did not find it surprising as he watched the scene below him. With this feeble strength, all of you want to be the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers in our Lingzhan Peak. You've overestimated yourselves. Many Lingzhan Peak's Martial Emperor's disciples and followers who were watching from the sky smirked disdainfully. Chapter 1248. All martial artists below the 4th level Martial Monarch stage soon fell on the ground. They could no longer get up. As for the remaining martial artists above the 4th level Martial Monarch stage, even the weakest one was able to withstand Songting and Zhang An's aura, albeit with great difficulty. Naturally, they all looked wretched. A few moments later, Songting and Zhang An finally withdrew their auras. Looking at the crowd sitting on the ground, Songting shouted coldly, "Throw these trashes out. Do you think anyone can simply join our Lingzhan Peak just like that?" The moment Songting's words left his mouth, the group of Martial Emperor's followers who had been waiting immediately acted and brought the people who had fallen on the ground away. Only a group of people with incredible strength, including Duan Lingtian, was left on the vast stone platform. The first selection has ended. We're going to start the second selection soon, Zhang An said at a speed that was neither hurried nor slow as he looked at the people who had passed the first selection. In the next instant, origin energy filled the sky with just a lift of his hand. At this moment, the sky quaked, and ripples began to spread out instantly. Like a stone that was thrown into a calm lake, ripples continued to spread out ceaselessly. Inscription formation. At the same time, everybody present on the scene could sense the rich inscription formation aura instantly. They knew Zhang An had activated an inscription formation. Among the crowd of people who had passed the first selection, there were a few people, including Duan Lingtian, who were not surprised by this. This was because they had already noticed there was an inscription formation hidden here. This inscription formation was extraordinary. It was personally set up by an inscription master at the Martial Emperor stage or above. Unless one was an inscription master as well, one would not have known about this. Under the watchful eyes of the others, the inscription formation was activated, and a translucent cylinder appeared in the sky. From the top until the bottom, the cylinder appeared to be hollow as though one could easily pass through it. The cylinder was around 100 meters long. The space inside could accommodate about 10 adults at each plane. It would be very crowded if it was any more than that. Apart from that, the translucent cylinder was separated into 7 different colors. The 7 colors were the colors of rainbows: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The gravitational stairs formation. Duan Lingtian identified the inscription formation with just a glance at the cylinder. He was no stranger to this inscription formation. He had a record of this inscription formation in his mind. The gravitational stairs formation was an inscription formation that could only be inscribed and set up by an inscription master at the Martial Emperor stage or above. It was neither an offensive nor defensive inscription formation. If one really had to put a label to it, then it could be categorized as an assistive inscription formation. The gravitational stairs formation was mainly set up using a fixed number of earth profundity fragments and a great number of supreme-grade origin stones along with other materials. It would form a gravitational stairs once it was activated. The cylinder in front of everybody's eyes was a gravitational stairs. From the bottom to the top, it had 7 colors. It was red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The 7 colors of the rainbow represented the different gravitational force in the gravitational stairs. If one did not possess enough strength, it would be impossible for one to climb the gravitational stairs. It was because the higher the gravitation stairs was, the gravitational force would become even more horrifying. This is the gravitational stairs formation. At this moment, Zhang An began to introduce the gravitational stairs formation. His explanation was similar to the information in Duan Lingtian's mind. So this is the legendary gravitational stairs formation. It's said that only the strongest martial monarchs are able to successfully climb the gravitational stairs formed by the gravitational stairs formation. It's extremely difficult for an ordinary martial monarch to go through this. I've heard that before. However, we'll definitely be able to do it as the Martial Emperor's disciples of Lingzhan Peak. Let alone the Martial Emperor's disciples, it won't be difficult even for us Martial Emperor's followers to do it. The group of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers buried their heads together in discussion. Each of them was confident in their own strength. Naturally, this was because they had heard about the gravitational stairs formation before. Gravitational stairs formation: if we don't have a cultivation base at the 7th level martial monarch stage or above, it'll most likely be impossible for us to pass. Many people sighed. Not necessarily, who knows, a 6th level martial monarch might just be able to pass through this gravitational stairs with the help of various profundities that far exceed his cultivation base. Oh yeah, that's possible as well. The group of martial emperor's disciples and followers studied Duan Lingtian and the others with interest. They looked forward to seeing them enter the gravitational stairs. They wanted to see how many people could climb the gravitational stairs. It's difficult for a person whose cultivation base is lower than the 7th level martial monarch stage to climb the gravitational stairs. Nangong Yi's face was a little glum when he looked at the gravitational stairs in the sky. However, a hint of anticipation gleamed in the depth of his eyes. Usually, it'll be difficult for a martial artist below the 7th level martial monarch stage to climb it, but, if you're very determined and have a profundity that far surpasses your cultivation base, you'll stand a chance of passing this stage, Duan Lingtian said. There was a detailed record of the gravitational stairs formation in his memory. He believed that as long as his cultivation base made a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage, along with the familiar yet strange message in his memory, he would be able to inscribe and set up a gravitational stairs formation on his own if he had enough materials. The gravitational stairs is the second selection for all of you today. Only those who can pass this round will be allowed to enter the next round. Zhang An continued to announce as he looked at Duan Lingtian and the others. Those who enter the next round will become the martial emperor's followers of Our Lingzan Peak. Even if you don't pass the third selection, you can still remain in Our Lingzan Peak as a martial emperor's follower, Song Ting chimed in after that. Apart from Duan Lingtian, the eyes of everyone on the vast stone platform brightened immediately. Even Nangong Chen, who was usually aloof and taciturn, was not an exception. Little Yi, I'll avenge you soon. You can just stop and rest for a while in the other world and wait for this enemy who killed you. At that time, you can give him a good bashing. In the distance, Lu Zhang glared at Duan Lingtian with hatred. If it was not for the fact that he did not dare to disrupt the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers today, he would have long made his move and killed this enemy who killed his younger brother. In his opinion, he would be able to personally avenge his brother soon. There's going to be a good show to watch soon. An old man stood at another side as he looked at Lu Zhang. A faint smile could be seen playing at the corner of his mouth. Chao Zhang, what good show? Another old man beside him asked curiously. You'll find out very soon, the old man called Chao Zhang answered nonchalantly with a smile. Chao Zhang was the old man who brought Duan Lingtian to his cultivation place 6 months ago. At that time, he was the one who blocked Lu Zhang when he tried to pick a fight with Duan Lingtian. He was also a martial emperor's disciple in Lingzan Peak. However, unlike Lu Zhang, he was a member from Zhong'an, the martial emperor's third direct disciples faction. As long as we pass this selection, we'll be able to become the martial emperor's followers. The eyes of the people on the vast stone platform brightened. They knew very well that it was almost impossible for them to become the martial emperor's disciple with the strength they currently possessed. Due to this reason, they could only settle for second best and become the martial emperor's followers. As long as they become the martial emperor's followers, they would be able to stay in Lingzan Peak and enjoy the cultivation resources here. Moreover, a martial emperor's follower would still have the chance to be promoted to become a martial emperor's disciple once they become powerful. They might even become a martial emperor's direct disciple if they caught martial emperor Lingzan's eyes. The second selection will begin now. 10 of you will form a group and enter the gravitational stairs from below. Whoever comes out on top will be regarded as passing the second selection, Song Ting said, his voice resonated loudly in the sky. After Song Ting's words left his mouth, nobody, including Duan Lingtian, moved. Nobody was willing to go out first and be the lab rat. When Song Ting saw this, his face turned glum. He asked with a frown, "What? Are all of you giving up?" Only then did someone begin to make a move. One by one, they rose up into the sky. In a span of 10 breaths, a group of 10 was finally formed as they stood below the gravitational stairs. Duan Lingtian glanced at them and discovered none of the 10 people were at the 7th level martial monarch stage or above. It'll be difficult for these people to pass the gravitational stairs, he thought to himself. He was very familiar with the gravitational stairs formation. Naturally, he was familiar with the gravitational stairs too. It was almost impossible for an ordinary martial artist at the 7th level martial monarch stage or below to successfully climb the gravitational stairs. Naturally, that was only for ordinary martial artists at the 7th level martial monarch stage or below. If those martial artists at the 7th level martial monarch stage or below were strong and had comprehended a strong profundity, it would not be difficult for them to climb the gravitational stairs. Take the current Yuan Lingtian for example. Although he was not a martial artist above the 7th level martial monarch stage, it would still be easy for him to climb the gravitational stairs since the profundities he had comprehended were strong. When Songting saw 10 people standing at the bottom entrance of the gravitational stairs, his face turned a little warmer, and he said casually, "Enter." Whoosh, 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 comma. At this moment, the 10 people standing at the entrance of the gravitational stairs began to make their move. One by one, they rushed into the gravitational stairs. Their bodies were lightning fast initially. However, they gradually slowed down after entering the gravitational stairs. The higher the stair, where it was closer to the violet zone, the stronger the gravitational force was. On the contrary, the lower the stair, where it was closer to the red zone, the weaker the gravitational force was. After the 10 of them unleashed all of their energies and entered the gravitational stairs forcefully, they managed to pass through the red, orange, yellow, and green zone even though their speed was turning slower and slower. When they reached the blue zone, their movements began to slow down drastically. It seemed like it was difficult for them to continue moving upward. All 10 of them were stuck in the blue zone on the gravitational stairs. There were only the indigo and violet zone left in the gravitational stairs above the blue zone. Once they made it past the violet zone, they would be regarded as passing the gravitational stairs. Chapter 1249. Everyone present on the scene was staring at the 10 people in the gravitational stairs with utmost concentration. After the 10 of them had reached the blue zone of the gravitational stairs, every step was difficult for them. Every step they took was extremely difficult that it seemed unlikely for them to make it through. Just a little bit more before that guy makes it through. Soon after, everyone present on the scene noticed a man who had almost passed through the blue zone to enter the indigo zone. Once he entered the indigo zone, he only needed to go through the violet zone before he would be regarded as passing the entire gravitational stairs. The reason this guy almost made his way out of the blue zone was due to the fact that he was using his spirit weapon, on top of the origin energy and profundity he had unleashed, to withstand the great gravitational force. Both of his arms were raised over his head as he held the spirit sword tightly in his hands. The origin energy on his body that had merged with many profundities made him seem like he had transformed into a gigantic sword. This sword had its tip pointed up as he did all he could to dispel the uninterrupted flow of gravitational force inside the gravitational stairs to help reduce the pressure. Whoosh! At the same time, he relied on his force to soar up into the sky and enter the indigo zone of the gravitational stairs in one breath. Just as everyone's eyes brightened because they thought this man stood a chance of passing the gravitational stairs. Boom! The indigo zone of the gravitational stairs suddenly released an even more powerful gravitational force. It slammed into the man, causing him to fall like an arrow that left its bow. Barf! Under the watchful eyes of the others, the man threw up a mouthful of blood before he was sent flying by the gravitational force, causing him to lose the chance of becoming the martial emperor's disciple or follower. I'm too careless. After he was sent flying, he sighed and wiped the blood off his mouth. He left quietly after that. It was precisely because he was happy that he had made it into the indigo zone of the gravitational stairs that he became careless. It resulted in him being sent flying by the gravitational force of the gravitational stairs. Otherwise, he would not be so wretched even if he did not manage to enter the violet zone of the gravitational stairs. Although he was eliminated by the gravitational stairs, he served as an example to the people after him. Based on his experience, the others learned they could use their spirit weapons to dispel the uninterrupted flow of gravitational force inside the gravitational stairs. The remaining 9 people took out their spirit weapons one after another. With the help of the strength from their spirit weapons, they were able to make it to the indigo zone of the gravitational stairs. Unlike the other man who was careless, they advanced slowly, making sure their steps were firm and successfully withstood the gravitational force in the indigo zone. Duan Lingtian, they've made it up to the indigo zone. Do you think they'll be able to reach the violet zone and make it through the gravitational stairs? A voice suddenly resonated by Duan Lingtian's ears. It was Nangong Yi. After Duan Lingtian, who was keeping an eye on the situation inside the gravitational stairs, heard Nangong Yi's question, he replied, they'll not be able to make it through the gravitational stairs. As for going into the violet zone, well, maybe one of them will able to. There was one among the remaining 9 who was quite powerful. He could be considered as the best among 6th level martial monarch stage martial artists. Only one person will make it to the violet zone. Nobody will be able to make it through the gravitational stairs. Nan Gongyi's face turned glum when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He had some impression of the 10 people who entered the gravitational stairs. They were all people from the same cultivation place with him in the past 6 months. They were all above 4th level but below the 7th level martial monarch stage. Some of these people were even more powerful than him. Then, does this mean that I have no hope of passing the gravitational stairs? Nan Gongyi's face turned glum. Despair could be seen in the depth of his eyes. Soon after, another person was sent flying from inside the gravitational stairs. This person actually wanted to rely on the spirit weapon in his hand and charged into the violet zone of the gravitational stairs by force in one breath. However, as soon as the spirit weapon in his hand touched the violet zone, it triggered an even more powerful gravitational force that sent him flying. After he was sent flying by the gravitational stairs, he sighed. He left in a daze, slightly battered. As time went by, more people were eliminated. In the end, only one person was left. He was also the person whom Duan Lingtian had a better impression of. This person forcibly charged into the violet zone of the gravitational stairs with the help of his spirit weapon and entered it completely. When most people thought he was going to pass the gravitational stairs, he was sent flying downward. His body slammed down on the vast stone platform with a loud bang. By the time he stood up, his entire body was covered in blood. His appearance was wretched. Before he left the vast stone platform, he announced to the crowd, I'm giving all of you a piece of advice. If your cultivation base is not at the 7th level martial monarch stage or above, it's better not to overestimate your strength. His words left a dark shadow in many people's hearts. These people were all below the 7th level martial monarch stage, including Nan Gongyi. The only exception was Duan Lingtian. Humph. You don't have a cultivation base at the 7th level martial monarch stage and above, and yet, you still dream of becoming a martial emperor's disciple or follower in Lingzan Peak. You guys really overestimated yourself. At this moment, a disdainful snort broke the silence on the vast stone platform. It was the silver-robed middle-aged man who had provoked Duan Lingtian and the other 2 earlier. Many people, including Nan Gongyi, were infuriated when Duan Lingtian suddenly said at a speed that was neither fast nor slow, how smelly, whose mouth is so stinky? Pissed. Ha 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 ha, indeed it's stinky. I can also smell it. The entire place was silent for a moment before people burst out laughing after they regained their senses. The group of martial artists below the 7th level martial monarch stage, including Nan Gongyi, laughed as they continued to joke, releasing their anger to their heart's content. Boy, you're going to die. The silver-robed middle-aged man finally snapped back to reality. His eyes were cold as he glared at Duan Lingtian. If it was not for the fact that this was not somewhere he was allowed to wreak havoc, he would have instantly killed the purple-clad young man. It would be like beating the lion before the dog to warn the others of the consequences of offending him. It seems like the smell is getting worse now, Nan Gongyi said sarcastically as he deliberately pinched his nose. As the silver-robed middle-aged man glared at Nan Gongyi and Duan Lingtian, he said to incite them, why you 2 boys. If you dare, enter the gravitational stairs with me right now. I'll show you just how impossible it is for ants like you to climb the gravitational stairs and pass the second selection. Nan Gongyi turned grave immediately when he heard this. He really did not have the confidence to pass the gravitational stairs. In his heart, he had already made mental preparation for getting eliminated. However, in the face of the silver-robed middle-aged man's provocation, he really did not know how to respond. At this moment, Duan Lingtian looked at the silver-robed middle-aged man and asked, you mean you can go through the gravitational stairs and pass the second selection? Of course, the silver-robed middle-aged man answered as though it was a matter of course. Looks like you're quite confident in yourself. After taking a long look at the silver-robed middle-aged man, Duan Lingtian proceeded to look at Nan Gongyi and smiled. Since he's so confident, let's join him in this game then. Alright, although Nan Gongyi had no idea what Duan Lingtian was planning, he still agreed to it in the end. In his opinion, although he did not possess the strength to climb the gravitational stairs, it was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to climb the gravitational stairs with his strength. As the silver-robed middle-aged man rose up into the sky, he looked at Nangong Chen and mocked, "Nangong Chen, you'll soon witness the scene of your two companions being eliminated by the gravitational stairs. Just an ant who hasn't even stepped into the 7th-level martial monarch stage, and you still dare to challenge the gravitational stairs. You really have overestimated yourself too much." Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and asked in a provocative tone, "Since you're so confident, do you dare to make a bet with me then?" "What bet?" The silver-robed middle-aged man snorted. "Let's bet whether the three of us and you will be able to pass through the gravitational stairs and pass the second selection or not," Duan Lingtian said. "How should we bet? Bet with what?" The silver-robed middle-aged man tried to maintain his imposing manner as he glared at Duan Lingtian before smirking. "Bet with our lives." When Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes gleamed coldly. "Bet with our lives." The moment these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, a commotion immediately broke out. Even the two martial emperor's direct disciples, Song Ting and Zhang En, instantly shifted their gaze toward Duan Lingtian. "Interesting." Zhang En smiled as he looked at Duan Lingtian with interest. "I like this guy." "Humph." Unlike Zhang En, Song Ting merely snorted coldly. It was obvious he knew Duan Lingtian was the person who killed Lu Yi, Lu Zong's younger brother. As for the silver-robed middle-aged man, he was also taken aback the moment he heard Duan Lingtian's words. After he noticed everyone's eyes shifting to him, he regained his senses. He looked at Duan Lingtian and asked in a deep voice, "How do you want to bet?" Until now, he still stubbornly tried to maintain his imposing manner. "Let's all swear by the tribulation oath, the 9 heavenly tribulation, if any one of us three fail to pass the gravitational stairs or if you successfully pass the gravitational stairs, the lightning penalty from the 9 heavenly tribulation will strike me to death." Duan Lingtian looked at the silver-robed middle-aged man and enunciated each of his words clearly. "On the contrary, if the three of us pass the gravitational stairs, and you're unable to pass, you'll be killed by the 9 heavenly tribulation's lightning penalty instead." The second these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, the entire place immediately fell silent. Is this purple-clad young man crazy? When people snapped out of their shock, they began to whisper among each other. They felt that Duan Lingtian had gone crazy. According to Duan Lingtian, if either him, Nangong Chen or Nangong Yi, did not pass the gravitational stairs, he would die. Even if all of them passed, he would also die if the silver-robed middle-aged man managed to pass the stairs. Only if all three of them passed the gravitational stairs and the silver-robed middle-aged man failed to pass will the silver-robed middle-aged man die. "Are you sure you want to bet like this?" After hearing Duan Lingtian's words, the silver-robed middle-aged man looked at Duan Lingtian with a sneer and smirked coldly. In his opinion, this purple-clad young man in front of him was merely digging his own grave. "Do you dare?" Duan Lingtian asked nonchalantly. "Do you dare?" The second these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, the crowd's eyes shifted to the silver-robed middle-aged man again. He instantly became the center of attention again. "Interesting, interesting." Zhang En flashed a brilliant smile. Song Ting, who was standing next to him, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes as he stared intently at the purple figure as though he was deep in thoughts. "Why wouldn't I?" The silver-robed middle-aged man smirked and said, "But, your life is not valuable enough to bet with me. Unless, you count Nangong Chen's life in as well." Chapter 1250. After the silver-robed middle-aged man finished his sentence, he looked at Nangong Chen with a sneer. "Nangong Chen, your companion is going to bet with his life. Do you dare to participate?" "Why wouldn't I?" Nangong Chen glanced at the silver-robed middle-aged man and said calmly, "We'll do as you said. I'll stake my life as well." He trusted Duan Lingtian unconditionally. If Duan Lingtian did not help him and his twin brother, Nangong Yi, half a year ago, they would have died. Duan Lingtian had saved their lives. Moreover, he had confidence in Duan Lingting. Even if he had no confidence in Duan Lingtian, he would not publicly undermine Duan Lingtian. "Good, very well." The silver-robed middle-aged man smiled widely upon hearing Nangong Chen's words. "If that's the case, the three of us will swear an oath." The silver-clad middle-aged man licked his dried lips as an anticipatory expression appeared on his face. It was as though he could not wait to see Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chen being killed by the lightning penalty. Following that, the three of them swore an oath under everyone's watchful eyes. Boom, 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 comma. 27 consecutive claps of thunder reverberated in the sky in correspondence to Duan Lingtian, Nangong Chen, and the silver-robed middle-aged man's oath. The deafening sound pierced the sky and entered everyone's ears. Since all of you are betting your lives, this time, only 4 of you will enter the gravitational stairs in the second round of selection. Zhang An said slowly. After that, he looked at Song Ting next to him and asked with a smile, "Second senior brother, do you have any opinion about this?" "I have no opinion," Song Ting responded coolly. "Nangong Chen, you and this overconfident guy will be killed by the lightning penalty soon." The silver-robed middle-aged man glanced at Nangong Chen and sneered. He looked at Duan Lingtian and said mockingly, "Boy, you'll find out soon, the bet you made will get you killed." Faced with the silver-robed middle-aged man's sarcastic remarks, Duan Lingtian's expression remained indifferent as he responded, "I'll wait and see." "Let's go," he called out to the Nangong twins and took the lead to head to the gravitational stairs. The gravitational stairs with 7 colors towered above them. The red zone of the gravitational stairs was the closest to them. It was also the zone with the weakest gravitational force. Duan Lingtian and the other 2 arrived at the bottom of the gravitational stairs along with the silver-robed middle-aged man. He still had a sneer on his face. "You go first." At this moment, Duan Lingtian looked at Nangong Yi as he spoke to him through voice transmission. "You don't have to care about anything else, just take your spirit weapon out and charge up with your fastest speed and full strength." Okay. Similar to Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi also trusted Duan Lingtian unconditionally. After hearing Duan Lingtian's words through voice transmission, he immediately acted without saying another word. Boom! Nangong Yi released his origin energy and profundities before he took his spirit weapon out and charged up the gravitational stairs. "You're overestimating yourself," the silver-robed middle-aged man snickered. He slowly took a step up as he looked at Duan Lingtian. "Boy, don't say that I'm bullying the weak, you can go first." The sneer on his face became even more apparent as he spoke. Duan Lingtian was not courteous to him. He climbed up and caught up to Nangong Yi. Only after Duan Lingtian entered the gravitational stairs did the silver-robed middle-aged man and Nangong Chen began to climb the stairs. They climbed the gravitational stairs at the same time. As the first person to enter the gravitational stairs, Nangong Yi, a 6th-level martial monarch, arrived at the indigo zone of the gravitational stairs with his spirit weapon in his hands. After the indigo zone was the violet zone. The violet zone was also the last zone. If they managed to pass through, they would be considered as successfully passing the gravitational stairs in the second round of selection. However, Nangong Yi was currently stuck in the indigo zone. He could not enter the violet zone because the gravitational force was too strong. There's no way. Nangong Yi's heart was filled with a sense of helplessness. He hated himself for being too weak. He would never be able to forgive himself if Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chen failed the gravitational stairs because of him and were killed by the 9 heavenly tribulations lightning penalty. When Nangong Yi thought of that, he hastened his speed. He rushed up in a frenzy, trying to enter the violet zone. "I must pass the gravitational stairs. I must pass the gravitational stairs." Boom! Nangong Yi was surprised to find he managed to enter the violet zone with his spirit weapon in hand. In fact, he felt the gravitational force in the violet zone was quite weak. It was not even as strong as the gravitational force in the red zone. Nangong Yi was bewildered as he successfully broke through the last hurdle of the gravitational stairs. He became the first person to successfully pass the gravitational stairs today. Wah! After Nangong Yi rushed out of the gravitational stairs, the onlookers fell silent. Gulp, gulp, comma. On the vast stone platform, the group of people participating in the selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers gulped. The scene before their eyes had shocked them. Nangong Yi was no stranger to those martial artists between the 4th-level martial monarch stage and the 7th-level martial monarch. They were in the same cultivation place for the last 6 months. Isn't he a 6th-level martial monarch martial artist? He climbed the gravitational stairs like he was just playing a game. They found it unbelievable. The other group of people participating in the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers who were 7th-level martial monarchs could tell Nangong Yi's cultivation base was not above the 7th-level martial monarch stage. When they learned about Nangong Chen's actual cultivation base from the discussion in their surroundings, they felt it was odd. The gravitational stairs are formed by the gravitational stairs formation. Could it be there's something wrong with the gravitational stairs formation? It's hard to say. Theoretically, Even a 7th-level martial monarch wouldn't be able to pass through the gravitational stairs so quickly, let alone a 6th-level martial monarch martial artist. There's something wrong. It's weird indeed. Many people felt that something was wrong. It was completely beyond their expectation that Nangongyi successfully passed the gravitational stairs so easily. What happened? Even Zhang and Song Ting, the two martial emperor's direct disciples, could not help but look at each other. Both of them saw the surprise in each other's eyes. They could clearly see Nangongyi's strength. With that strength, it was unlikely for him to be able to enter the violet zone of the gravitational stairs, let alone pass through it. For a time, they also felt that something must be wrong with the gravitational stairs formation. That's impossible. At the same time, the silver-robed middle-aged man in the gravitational stairs also noticed that Nangongyi had successfully passed through the gravitational stairs in the second round of selection. Hints of shock and amazement could be seen on his face. Nothing's impossible. In the next moment, a calm voice sounded by his ear. It was as loud as thunder. When he recovered from his shock, he saw the purple-clad young man who had entered the gravitational stairs before him was climbing up at an outrageously fast speed. In fact, even Nangong Chen's progress was incredibly fast. In just a blink of an eye, he discovered the two people he could not wait to kill had successfully passed through the gravitational stairs after Nangongyi. At once, he was the only one left at that huge gravitational stairs. No, the silver-robed middle-aged man's face changed suddenly. He did not have time to think about anything else. He could sense the imminent danger. He hurriedly took his spirit weapon out. He intended to quickly pass through the gravitational stairs. He still had a shot. Even if 3 of them passed the gravitational stairs, he would not die if he managed to pass. Naturally, he would die if he could not pass the gravitational stairs. Passing through the gravitational stairs should be easy for me. Even at this moment, the silver-robed middle-aged man was still filled with confidence. The way Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chen passed through the gravitational stairs was as smooth as passing clouds and flowing water. They did not seem to be affected by the gravitational force within the gravitational stairs. Both of them were as relaxed and impressive as Nangongyi when they passed the gravitational stairs. There shouldn't be a problem with the gravitational stairs, right? Song Ting and Zhang An looked at each other again. Their eyes glinted with uncertainty. Soon after, they realized that something seemed to be wrong with the gravitational stairs. Boom, 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 comma. Under everyone's watchful eyes, all the gravitational force from the 7 zones began to stir. They seemed to merge before they landed on the silver-robed middle-aged man. Following that, everyone heard a shrill and bitter scream. No. In the next moment, the silver-robed middle-aged man was enveloped by the gravitational force from the 7 zones. His strength and his spirit weapon's strength vanished in just an instant. Boom! Another loud bang sounded. The silver-clad middle-aged man abruptly fell off the gravitational stairs. He's dead, many people thought to themselves when they saw the silver-robed man fell off the gravitational stairs. Almost at the same time, the sky darkened as dark clouds gathered from all directions while the clear sounds of thunder were heard. No, no, when the silver-clad middle-aged man heard the thunder, he reacted as though he saw a ghost. He moved as if he intended to escape. However, could he escape it? Under everyone's watchful eyes, the silver-robed middle-aged man was struck by the 9 heavenly tribulations lightning penalty, even his profundity fragments were not an exception. The only thing left was his spatial ring that solitarily fell to the ground. The silver-robed middle-aged man died just like that. Betting on his life, an oath with the 9 heavenly tribulation could not be violated. Once it was violated, the person would be killed by the lightning penalty no matter where he was. Duan Lingtian, what happened there? Nangongyi was baffled about him mysteriously passing through the gravitational stairs. Moreover, Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chen had flashed through the gravitational stairs so quickly that it added to his doubts. Although he knew both of them possessed the strength to pass the gravitational stairs, it was impossible for them to be so fast. When he saw the silver-robed middle-aged man did not make it through the gravitational stairs and was killed by the lightning penalty, he became even more confused. Chapter 1251. When Nangongyi was speaking to Duan Lingtian went to the place where the silver-robed middle-aged man was killed by the lightning penalty and kept his spatial ring. His movement was as smooth as passing clouds and flowing water. Isn't it obvious? The three of us passed the gravitational stairs, and he didn't, so he was killed by the lightning penalty. Duan Lingtian only responded to Nangong Yi after he returned to stand next to the Nangong twins. However, Nangong Yi could tell that Duan Lingtian was brushing him off. He felt more and more certain that the earlier incident, including him passing the gravitational stairs and the gravitational stairs' sudden movement that made the silver-robed middle-aged man who was stronger than him fall, had something to do with Duan Lingtian. However, he could see that Duan Lingtian did not plan to explain anything, so he did not persist in asking even though there were a million questions in his mind. When everyone was still in shock over the scene earlier, Song Ting and Zhang En, the two martial emperor's direct disciples, went to the gravitational stairs. Currently, the 7 colors of the gravitational stair that represented 7 levels of gravitational force had returned to normal. Song Ting and Zhang En glanced at each other and moved simultaneously. They disappeared before everyone's eyes. In the next moment, everyone saw their figures on the gravitational stairs as they quickly climbed up. From the beginning to the end, they did not use much of their power. They did not even mobilize the heaven and earth energy, let alone form the heaven and earth phenomenon. When Song Ting and Zhang En reappeared, they were standing before Duan Lingtian. Song Ting looked at Duan Lingtian with a piercing gaze as he asked in a deep voice, "What did you do earlier?" However, Duan Lingtian ignored Song Ting's question. He maintained his carefree expression as though he would remain indifferent even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. "You're pretty good. If Master is here, I'm sure he'll like you." Unlike Song Ting, Zhang En was quite friendly toward Duan Lingtian as he sized Duan Lingtian up with interest. The master he was referring to was naturally Martial Emperor Lingzan, the master of Lingzan Peak. Whether it was Zhang En or Song Ting, they did not find any abnormalities when they passed through the gravitational stairs. As such, there was only one possibility. The purple-clad young man before them had to be the cause of the earlier incident. Although they did not know how he did it, it was the only possibility. "I wouldn't necessarily like him even if he likes me," Duan Lingtian calmly responded when he heard Zhang An's statement. For a time, the smile on Zhang An's face became a little bit forced. Song Ting's face sank after hearing Duan Lingtian's word. A fierce voice suddenly scolded, "How presumptuous." Following that, a figure appeared behind Song Ting. He glared at Duan Lingtian and continued to scold in a deep voice, "Boy, you dare to disrespect the Lord Martial Emperor so rudely, you should be killed." The person who appeared was Lu Zhang. Originally, he was extremely unhappy when he saw Duan Lingtian won the bet, but he could only wait for the right opportunity to kill Duan Lingtian. He thought he would have to wait until the 3rd round of selection before he would be presented with a chance to kill Duan Lingtian. He did not think Duan Lingtian would dare to disrespect Lingzan Peak's Martial Emperor. He instantly realized this was his opportunity to kill him. It was justified. "What, you're in such a hurry to kill me?" Duan Lingtian said calmly as he narrowed his eyes at Lu Zhang. "I don't know what you mean by that. The only thing I know is you disrespected Lord Martial Emperor, so you must die." Lu Zhang looked at Duan Lingtian with a darkened expression. He turned to look at Song Ting and Zhang En and asked for permission respectfully, "Senior brother Song, senior brother Zhang. Please let me kill this boy as a warning to the others so they won't follow his example." This time, Zhang En did not open his mouth. Although he thought Duan Lingtian was pleasing to the eyes, his words had angered him. Every dragon had a reverse scale, touch it and one must die. His master was his reverse scale. Hence, he acquiesced to Lu Zhang's request. "Go." As for Song Ting, he looked Duan Lingtian with a cold glint in his eyes as if he was waiting for the opportunity to devour him. Yes, when Lu Zhang heard Song Ting's words, his eyes lit up. He was very excited. He finally had his opportunity. He could finally avenge his brother. Lu Zhang looked at Duan Lingtian once again as he said through voice transmission, "Boy, you dared to kill my brother. I want your life today." However, he said something different outwardly. "Boy, you dare to disrespect our Lingzan Peak's Lord Martial Emperor. Don't even think about being a Martial Emperor's disciple or follower, you'll leave this world today. I, Lu Zhang, will kill you today and send you to hell for the pride of our Lingzan Peak's Martial Emperor." Lu Zhang said with pseudo-righteousness as he stepped toward Duan Lingtian. One step was faster than the other. The air turned turbulent and a series of air explosions sounded with every step he took. "You just want to avenge your brother." Duan Lingtian sneered as Lu Zhang charged toward him with a great momentum. It doesn't matter what you say, you're definitely dying today. Lu Zhang did not care about Duan Lingtian's words. The origin energy on his body surged suddenly as a variety of profundities trailed after it like shadows. He charged out like the god of war, poised to attack. Meanwhile, everyone's gaze, including the two martial emperor's direct disciples, Songting and Zhong'an, landed on Duan Lingtian and Lu Zhang. Even the Nangong twins were no exceptions. They had received a voice transmission from Duan Lingtian asking them to stand further away. However, that did not stop them from staring intently at Duan Lingtian and Lu Zhang. In addition to being senior brother Songting's right-hand man, senior brother Lu Zhang's strength is ranked in the top 3 among the martial emperor's disciples in Lingzan Peak. I'm afraid the purple-clad young man is unlucky today. That was the inner thoughts of the group of Lingzan Peak's martial emperor's disciples and followers. They did not think Duan Lingtian could win Lu Zhang. Whereas the people who came to participate in the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and follower were staring expectantly at Duan Lingtian. They hoped that Duan Lingtian would win and bring honor to them. After all, they were not Lingzan Peak's people yet. Even the two martial emperor's direct disciples, Songting and Zhong'an, did not think Duan Lingtian had the strength to win Lu Zhang even though they thought he was strange. They knew about Lu Zhang's strength. He was ranked top 3 among all the martial emperor's disciples in Lingzan Peak. Boy, if there's a next life, remember that you can't just simply offend anyone as you please. Lu Zhang's voice sounded again. This time it was laced with irritation. He took out his spirit weapon and moved, disappearing before most people's eyes. He was so fast that it was shocking. When he disappeared, the heaven and earth phenomenon at the void above him also charged forward. Its target was Duan Lingtian. 5 ancient black dragon silhouettes and 7,000 ancient horned dragon silhouettes lunged at Duan Lingtian with bared fangs. That was Lu Zhang's strength. Lu Zhang's speed was outrageously fast that it was difficult for most people, including the Nangong twins, to catch. However, in the eyes of Duan Lingtian, Lu Zhang's speed was so slow that it was pitiful. It was so slow that he casually raised his hand and easily caught the spirit weapon in Lu Zhang's hand. Pa! He caught Lu Zhang's spirit weapon with his bare hands. The crisp sound caused the entire place to fall silent. Many people had a shocked expression on their faces. They had a hard time believing the scene before them was true. Impossible. As one of the people involved, Lu Zhang was the first to react. He stared at the purple-clad young man in horror as he shook his head woodenly. Nothing's impossible, Duan Lingtian said faintly. As he responded, a 5-colored energy that just appeared on his body suddenly surged. It was as though it had transformed into a 5-colored beast with an open mouth that devoured Lu Zhang. In an instant, Lu Zhang was swallowed whole. There was nothing left of him. It seemed as though he had followed in his brother, Lu Yi's footsteps. After Lu Zhang was reduced to ashes, only a few profundity fragments and a spatial ring were left. All of it was kept by Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian withdrew the 5-colored energy on his body. It was as though it was never there in the first place. In fact, the heaven and earth phenomenon did not even have time to fully form from the time the 5-colored energy appeared to the time it disappeared. That showed how fast Duan Lingtian's attack was. Even the heaven and earth energy did not have time to react. Silence. The scene was dead silent. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of heavy breathing and gasping. The Nangong twins were dumbstruck by the earlier scene. Although they noticed Duan Lingtian's improvement in the past 6 months was huge, they did not think it would be this great. Lingzan Peak's martial emperor's disciple, Lu Zhang, had mobilized the strength of 5 ancient black dragons and 7,000 ancient horned dragons with his spirit weapon. However, he was still killed by Duan Lingtian with just a blow. From the beginning until the end, not only did Duan Lingtian not use his spirit weapon, but he did not even make any obvious movement. He had killed Lu Zhang with just the raging energy that rose from his body. He's too strong. His strength, I'm afraid he's on par with the martial emperor's direct disciples. The way he killed senior brother Lu Zhang was so simple as if he was killing an ant. At this moment, Duan Lingtian naturally became the center of attention. This was because his strength was just too terrifying and shocking. At this moment, Songting finally recovered from the shock and stared coldly at Duan Lingtian. He asked sharply, "Who are you? What's your purpose for coming to our Lingzan Peak?" Meanwhile, his robe fluttered as origin energy rose from his body and profundities followed like shadows. It was as though it had transformed into blazing bright-colored flame before it enveloped him. Chapter 1252. When Song Ting asked his question, everyone's attention shifted to Duan Ling Tian. Except for the Nangong twins, everyone else was curious. Yes, this purple-clad young man's strength was not inferior to the martial emperor's direct disciples, and yet he came to participate in the selection of Ling Zan Peak's martial emperor's disciples and followers. It was really quite strange. One had to know there were quite a few martial emperors and demon emperors who were stronger than martial emperor Ling Zan on Cloud Continent. Martial Emperor Ling Zan's strength was at most average compared to all the publicly known martial emperors and demon emperors on Cloud Continent. In their opinion, people like Duan Ling Tian with his strength at the peak of the martial monarch stage could be the direct disciple of a stronger martial emperor or demon emperor. What purpose could I have? In the face of Song Ting's question, Duan Ling Tian merely glanced at him coldly. He shrugged lazily and said, "You're overthinking things. It seems like you won't talk if I don't attack." Song Ting's face sank, and his tone became colder. "What, you still want to attack me?" Duan Ling Tian smiled brightly. He narrowed his eyes as he smiled. "Do you think you're invincible just because you're able to kill one of our Ling Zan Peak's member? You should know that the Lu Zhang you killed was merely a normal martial emperor's disciple of Ling Zan Peak." Song Ting's voice held a hint of certainty. "I'll admit you're quite strong. However, if you think I'm as useless as Lu Zhang, then you're really stupid." No matter what, Lu Zhang was one of his people. As the saying went, one has to look at the master before beating the dog. The purple-clad young man had killed Lu Zhang in front of him. That was equivalent to hitting him in the face. It embarrassed and angered him. At this moment, he seemed to feel the mocking gazes directed at him from all directions. Even Zhang An, who stood at the side, was shocked. He did not think the purple-clad young man would kill Lu Zhang, Song Ting's crazy dog. He had to admit he was a little pleased. "Zhang An, I'm afraid this person with a mysterious identity came to our Ling Zan Peak to participate in the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers with an ulterior motive. You and I should join hands to force him to tell us his purpose for coming to Ling Zan Peak. We'll kill him if he refuses to say anything to save trouble in the future." Song Ting sent a voice transmission to Zhang An. Zhang An frowned slightly. To be honest, he was not unwilling to fight together with Song Ting. However, the identity of the purple-clad young man was too mysterious. Although he and Song Ting were usually on opposite sides, they were still united in important matters regarding the safety of Ling Zan Peak. Therefore, he flew out and stood beside Song Ting. Both of them were going to fight Duan Ling Tian together. Senior brother Zhang An is going to join hands with senior brother Song Ting. That scene shocked many people. That Duan Ling Tian, in the distance, Chao Zhang was dumbstruck. He could not recover from the shock for quite a while. When Duan Ling Tian easily killed Lu Zhang, he was shocked by Duan Ling Tian's strength. Although he knew Duan Ling Tian was strong, he did not think his strength would be so great. When he saw the martial emperor's direct disciple whose side he was on, Zhang An, had joined hands with Song Ting to fight Duan Ling Tian, he could not help but feel excited. Duan Ling Tian could actually make the two martial emperor's direct disciples, who were usually as incompatible as fire and water, join hands and fight him. I'm afraid his luck is really bad. Regardless if it's senior brother Song Ting or senior brother Zhang An, they're both Ling Zan Peak's martial emperor's direct disciples. The purple-clad young man's strength is at most on par with a martial emperor's direct disciple. He might win one of them, but it's impossible for him to win when it's 2 against 1. How do you know his strength is at most on par with a martial emperor's direct disciples? HPMH. As we all know, martial emperor's direct disciples are already at the peak of martial monarch stage. Those stronger than martial emperor's direct disciples are only martial emperor powerhouses. Do you think he's a martial emperor powerhouse? The group of martial emperor's disciples and followers were whispering among themselves. None of them thought Duan Ling Tian had the advantage facing the 2 greatest martial emperor's direct disciples in Ling Zan Peak. Your strength is admirable. I'm Zhang An, the 3rd direct disciple under Ling Zan Peak's martial emperor. I would like to know why you're participating in our Ling Zan Peak selection for the martial emperor's disciples and followers with your strength. Zhang An looked at Duan Ling Tian solemnly and asked, as far as I know, most of the cultivation places of martial emperors and demon emperors in the inner land of Cloud Continent are also holding the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers. Why do you ask so many questions? I know he's bad with just a look. Before Duan Ling Tian could respond, Song Ting sneered again with a cold gleam in his eyes. Then, he disappeared with a, "Who?" sound and reappeared in front of Duan Lingtian. Boom! A loud explosion reverberated in the air, causing airwaves to sweep out in all directions. The airwaves set off a series of air explosions that sounded like exploding mines. It created a flurry of hurricane that caused everyone, apart from Zhang En, to squint. Although they did not clearly see what had happened, they knew Duan Lingtian was fighting with Song Ting. Song Ting, Zhang An's face sank. He did not expect Song Ting to be so eager. Naturally, he knew of Song Ting's intention. He wanted to kill the other party without giving the other party a chance to speak to vent his anger. Although he guessed Song Ting's intentions, he still could not stand by and watch because he could see that Song Ting was not a match for his opponent. Naturally, he intended to fight, but he did not plan to go along with Song Ting's plan to kill the other party. He would cooperate to suppress the other party and force him to tell him his purpose for coming to Lingzan Peak. If his purpose was not malicious, who knew if there would be a fourth martial emperor's direct disciple in Lingzan Peak? When Zhang En thought about how the other party might become his junior brother, he was so excited that he held back his attacks and movement. However, he quickly discovered that the opponent's strength did not allow him to hold back. Boom, 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 a burst of deafening explosion reverberated in the air again. Duan Lingtian was already in a fight with both martial emperor's direct disciples, Song Ting and Zhang En. Both Song Ting and Zhang En had taken out their spirit weapons. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian remained empty-handed. However, it did not seem like he was at a disadvantage. In fact, he seemed to have a slight advantage. Shu, Zing, Song Ting and Zhang En used a sword and a blade respectively. They still could not win the battle after a while. Feeling embarrassed and angry, they finally decided to unleash their full strength. As Lingzan Peak's martial emperor's direct disciples, their blades Ray and swords Shadow cooperated seamlessly with each other and headed straight for Duan Lingtian with a great momentum. Wherever the blades Ray and swords Shadow passed, the onlookers evaded. The group of people who stood on the stone platform behind also had to evade it. When the blades Ray and swords Shadow fell, the vast stone platform was cut into countless pieces like a tofu. The stone platform with countless cracks was swept by their strength. In a blink of an eye, it began to fall apart. Moreover, with their attacks, some of the broken stones from the ruined vast stone platform flew up in the air. When both of them attacked, the heaven and earth energy stirred and eventually formed a vast heaven and earth phenomenon. At the void above them, there were 7 ancient black dragons silhouettes respectively. It meant each of their attacks contained the strength of 7 ancient black dragons. God, he's also so strong. While many people fawned over the strength Song Ting and Zhang En displayed, someone's shout caught the people's attention. On the other side, stood a purple-clad young man. The purple-clad young man stood there as his robe billowed in the wind. His long black hair was also fluttering in the wind since his hairband was shattered by the powerful force. There was a 5-colored flame blazing on the purple-clad young man's body. It exuded a chilling aura. At the void above him, there were 7 ancient black dragon silhouettes that indicated he was not inferior to Song Ting and Zhang En. That's why Zhang En and I couldn't capture him. It turns out he has been using the strength of 7 ancient black dragons from the beginning. Song Ting was not shocked when he saw the scene. Instead, he laughed. However, with me and Zhang En unleashing our full strength, any one of us would be on par with him. The killing intent in Song Ting's eyes intensified when he thought about this. What kind of person is he? He can mobilize the strength of 7 ancient black dragons without utilizing his spirit weapon. Many onlookers exclaimed in shock. Their exclamations were heard by Song Ting, and it shocked him. He seemed to have noticed something before his face changed dramatically. Yes, the strength their opponent displayed was before he utilized his spirit weapon. Third junior brother, we have to kill him before he takes his spirit weapon out, otherwise, we'll be the ones dying today. Song Ting hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Zhang En who was fighting Duan Lingtian with him. After Zhang En heard Song Ting's voice transmission, Zhang En trembled for a moment before he reacted. Earlier, he was also stunned by the strength Duan Lingtian displayed without even using a spirit weapon. At this moment, he knew their opponent's strength was greater than theirs. When he heard Song Ting's reminder, his expression turned solemn. He no longer dared to be negligent. If their opponent took out his spirit weapon, he and Song Ting would be defeated. At that time, not only Song Ting, but he would also be at the mercy of the other party. For a time, both Zhang En and Song Ting's strength seemed to increase a little. They headed straight for Duan Lingtian with great momentum. Chapter 1253. Despite facing the two incoming most powerful martial emperor's direct disciples who were as fast as lightning, Duan Lingtian still remained calm. He only moved when the both of them were inches away from him as the gleam of the overwhelming blade and the shadow of the sword covered him. More accurately, he did not actually move, but the blazing five-colored flames surged forward. Boom! The five-colored flames billowed and caused the air to stir. Suddenly, a deafening air explosion burst, shaking many of the people. As Song Ting and Zhang An's attack almost landed on Duan Lingtian, in that split second, the surging five-colored flames around him took on the shape of a sword. In an instant, Duan Lingtian seemed to have transformed into a huge five-colored sword and struck down at the both of them who were heading towards him as if he was separating heaven and earth. Boom, 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 comma. Wherever the huge sword passed, the air became turbulent and a burst of deafening loud bangs popped. The rolling waves seemed to transform into a hurricane and swept in all directions. Mercy, please! Before anyone had the time to react, an earnest cry from a distance was heard. Many people glanced up in surprise as they wanted to see who it was. At that very second, boom, they merely saw a figure appearing in front of Duan Lingtian beside Song Ting and Zhang An. They heard an even more frightening noise before they could clearly see the figure. A loud bang reverberated as if the sky was falling and the earth was being shattered. From where the bang was heard, the rolling shockwave spread out in all directions, knocking the surrounding people down. The group of martial emperor's disciples was still doing fine. They merely took a dozen steps backward. On the other hand, the martial emperor's followers and people who came to participate in the selection were sent flying quite a distance away. Those with a lower cultivation base even turned ashen and spat blood as they suffered quite severe injuries. Such powerful strength. The two colliding forces created a shock wave. That kind of strength goes beyond the strength of a martial monarch. Many of the martial emperor's disciples were shocked as they stared ahead. They discovered that both Song Ting and Zhang An were also sent flying away. Their faces paled and the corners of their mouths were stained with blood. Two people stood at the epicenter of the shock wave. In addition to the purple-clad youth, there was another man in plain clothes. As they saw him standing there, it seemed as if he was one with the power to command heaven and earth. He looked like one could not differentiate him in a crowd. However, he looked a bit gray right then. Finally, he could not suppress it anymore and spat out a mouthful of blood while taking 2 steps backward. He looked at the purple-clad youth in front of him with an alarmed expression. Are you a martial emperor powerhouse? Without a doubt, the purple-clad youth was Duan Lingtian. Earlier, he had been prepared to kill both Song Ting and Zhang An, the martial emperor's direct disciples of Lingzan Peak, with a single strike. In that split second, the middle-aged man in front of him appeared just in time and saved both of them. First level martial emperor stage, are you martial emperor Lingzan? Duan Lingtian asked the middle-aged man in front of him calmly. Obviously, he could tell what his opponent's cultivation base was. If the middle-aged man was martial emperor Lingzan, then he was really disappointed because he was completely different from the martial emperor Lingzan that Duan Lingtian had imagined. First level martial emperor stage. Martial emperor Lingzan. After Duan Lingtian finished his sentence, everyone's attention was drawn to the man. He's the Lord Martial Emperor. A group of martial emperor's disciples and followers gawked at the middle-aged man with surprise as their eyes were laced with suspicion. They were not very convinced. Their Lingzan Peak Lord Martial Emperor lost to a person who came to participate in the selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. It was too ridiculous. Is he Martial Emperor Lingzan? As for the group of people who came to participate in the selection of Lingzan Peak Martial Emperor's disciples and followers, including Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi, all of them were stunned while they stared at the middle-aged man. I don't think that's possible. If he is Martial Emperor Lingzan, does that mean the purple-clad youth can beat Martial Emperor Lingzan in a battle? Yes, the middle-aged man lost earlier after all. As far as I know, shock waves can only be created when Martial Emperor powerhouses' attacks collide with each other. Perhaps they are both real Martial Emperor powerhouses. If the purple-clad youth is a Martial Emperor powerhouse, then what's he doing here at the Lingzan Peak selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers? Maybe he came to crash the party, who knows? While they were discussing, puzzlement and confusion were apparent on their faces. Martial Emperor powerhouse. The Nangong twins glanced at Duan Lingtian and then saw the shock in each other's eyes. Is he really a Lord Martial Emperor? The group of Lingzhan Peak Martial Emperor's disciples and followers looked bitter. If the middle-aged man really was Martial Emperor Lingzhan, then it would really be humiliating for Lingzhan Peak. Even though they were Martial Emperor's disciples and followers of Lingzhan Peak, they had never seen the Martial Emperor Lingzhan, which was why they were not certain if the middle-aged man was the Martial Emperor Lingzhan or not. However, from the performance earlier, it was obvious that the middle-aged man had lost to the purple-clad youth. If he really were the Martial Emperor Lingzhan, the incident today would be a laughingstock. Everyone would say that Martial Emperor Lingzhan of Lingzhan Peak was not as talented as someone who participated in the Lingzhan Peak selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. How ironic, as or isn't he the Lord Martial Emperor? Among all of us here, I'm afraid only senior brother Song Ting and senior brother Zhong'an would know, said one of the Martial Emperor's disciples. The rest of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers shifted their gaze to Song Ting and Zhong'an, looking expectantly at them. At that point, they finally recuperated from their grave injuries after consuming some healing pills. Lingering fear was still apparent on their faces. When they looked up at the purple-clad youth in the distance, they were stunned. Martial Emperor Powerhouse, he's actually a Martial Emperor Powerhouse. They never thought that the purple-clad youth who came to participate in Lingzhan Peak's selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers was an actual Martial Emperor Powerhouse. A Martial Emperor Powerhouse who came to participate in the Lingzhan Peak selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers. They could not think of a reason for him to do so even after they racked their brains. Soon, their eyes shifted away from the purple-clad youth and landed on the middle-aged man as they greeted respectfully, "First Senior Brother." First Senior Brother. The group of Lingzhan Peak Martial Emperor's disciples and followers finally relaxed after they heard Song Ting and Zhong'an's address. So, it turns out to be the Lord Martial Emperor's first direct disciple, Senior Brother Jodi. It's my first time seeing Senior Brother Jodi. Senior Brother Jodi is famous at Lingzhan Peak to be as elusive as the Lord Martial Emperor. I never expected Senior Brother Jodi to be a Martial Emperor Powerhouse. According to the purple-clad youth, Senior Brother Jodi is a first-level Martial Emperor stage. However, we still don't know the background of this purple-clad youth. Even Senior Brother Jodi, whose cultivation base is at first-level Martial Emperor stage, lost to him. The group of Lingzhan Peak Martial Emperor's disciples and followers were discussing it as their gaze landed on Duan Lingtian in unison, making him the center of attention again. The Nangong twins also turned to look at Duan Lingtian after glancing at Jodi. It isn't Martial Emperor Lingzhan, however, Jodi would undoubtedly be the strongest person in Lingzhan Peak after Martial Emperor Lingzhan, yet he lost to Duan Lingtian. Did he really come to participate in the Lingzhan Peak selection of Martial Emperor's disciples and followers? If he did, I'm afraid the strongest person in Lingzhan Peak after the Martial Emperor Lingzhan is now someone else. Many people were whispering among themselves, while some smarter ones glanced at the Nangong twins. Some of them more or less knew the Nangong twins. Nangong Chen, you seem to know him. Nangong Yi, I remember the first time that I saw you all, you were with him from then on. Did you all know that he was a Martial Emperor Powerhouse? Many people were curiously asking the Nangong twins. The Nangong twins felt speechless and shocked while they looked at each other. Did Duan Lingtian have any reservations back then? He couldn't have obtained the strength equivalent to a Martial Emperor Powerhouse within half a year, could he? In both of their hearts, only their shock remained. Both Duan Lingtian and Jodi had reserved their strength after the shock wave spread, therefore there was no heaven and earth phenomenon. Therefore, the people could only speculate that their strength was equivalent to a Martial Emperor Powerhouse's through their conversation from the shock wave that had appeared earlier. He's a Martial Emperor Powerhouse. Chao Zhang, who stood at a distance, finally recovered from the shock, and immediately he broke out in a cold sweat. He did not expect the purple-clad youth who he had personally received 6 months ago would turn out to be a Martial Emperor Powerhouse. Thinking of his cold shoulder towards him, Chao Zhang felt a chill run down his spine. He had been so close to death. At that minute, Jodi said faintly, "Both of you, come here," obviously calling out Song Ting and Zhong'an. The both of them did not dare to dawdle. They hurried to Jodi's side with their heads down and greeted respectfully again, "First Senior Brother." Before Jodi, both of them were as gentle as a cat. "Both of you, apologize," Jodi ordered them while looking at Duan Lingtian. "Apologize." Song Ting and Zhong'an could not help but be stunned when they heard him. Chapter 1254. Chapter 1255. Martial Emperor Lingzhan. After that, the duo came to their senses and realized that their first senior brother had asked them to apologize to the purple-clad youth before them. First senior brother, although Song Ting was stunned by the strength displayed by Duan Lingtian, he still could not apologize to him. Naturally, he would not resign to that. However, he was interrupted by Zhou Di before he finished his sentence. Zhou Di calmly said, "He is Master's guest." Zhou Di emphasized the word, guest. Master's guest. Song Ting was astonished after he heard Zhou Di. "Sir, sorry for offending you. We didn't know that you're Master's guest. I hope you'll forgive us." At that point, Zhang An had already bowed to Duan Lingtian and apologized. Although Duan Lingtian looked mind-blowingly young, the strength he presented was sufficient for Zhang An to bow to him and apologize. Moreover, who knew if he was a demon emperor powerhouse? Song Ting took a deep breath and followed suit. Now, he would not dare to be reckless. What kind of joke was this? First senior brother Zhou Di had said that he was Master's guest. If he still continued to act recklessly, it would mean that he was disrespecting the Master. For that reason, he would never dare to do so. However, Duan Lingtian ignored their apology as he looked at Zhou Di and asked puzzledly, "Martial Emperor Lingzan knows me." New page. Dated by boxnovel.com. Duan Lingtian also knew that the middle-aged man in front of him was not the martial emperor Lingzan, but his first direct disciple. "You're kidding, aren't you? If the master didn't know you, he wouldn't have asked me to come and invite you for a gathering," Zhou Di said to Duan Lingtian, "Please follow me." He left after that. Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrows and followed closely with his heart full of curiosity and confusion. After Duan Lingtian left with Zhou Di, above the spacious stone platform which was ruined was dead silent although there were many people. The silence was terrifying. After a while, they slowly came to their senses, their faces and their eyes were filled with shock. "Guest, that purple-clad youth is the Lord Martial Emperor's guest." Everyone was shocked. "Song Ting, you seem to be a little off today, as if you can't wait to kill him. Is it because you have some deep hatred for him? I've been totally dragged down by you today." Zhang An looked at Song Ting and complained through voice transmission, "Don't tell me it's because of Lu Zong's death." When he heard Zhang An's voice transmission, Song Ting, who was a little wooden, finally recovered from the shock. Unconsciously, a bitter smile hung from the corner of his mouth. At first, he wanted to kill him because of Lu Zong's death. To be more precise, it was because of the death of Lu Zhang and his brother. One should look at the master before beating the dogs. By killing his men, he felt challenged, which was why he wanted to kill the other party so badly. Who knew that the other party had the strength equivalent to a martial emperor powerhouse? In fact, the other party was stronger than first senior brother and was a guest of his master's. If he had known all that, he would not have made it difficult for the other party and consequently, be bogged down deeper and deeper. "I hope master won't blame me for this." At that moment, Song Ting started to be afraid. Martial Emperor Lingzan's guest. Why, I have never heard of that from Duan Lingtian. The Nangong twins looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion and doubts. However, they felt another surge of shock when they remembered the strength he showed. Eventually, Zhang An announced after he recovered, "We'll continue with the second round of selection." The others also slowly came back to their senses from the earlier surprises and shifted their focus to the second round of selection. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian was following Zhou Di with a slight frown while doubt filled his heart. "I don't seem to know that martial emperor Lingzan," he thought to himself. Following Zhou Di's lead, he finally saw martial emperor Lingzan in a mist-shrouded stone platform on the side of the Lingzan Peak summit. Behind the mist, there was a little stone platform, and on it was a simple and neat house with a courtyard. In the courtyard, a stone table stood quietly with 2 stone benches on each side. "Master, the guest has arrived." After Zhou Di brought Duan Lingtian here, he bowed to the person who sat at the stone table with a very respectful tone. The person who sat there was a youthful man. When he turned to look at Duan Lingtian, his face was also on display for all to see and Duan Lingtian could not help but be stunned. It's you." Looking at the familiar but strange face before him, he was slightly surprised because it was not the first time they had met. The youthful man was Martial Emperor Lingzan. He looked at Duan Lingtian while exclaiming, "I originally said that you've got the chance to comprehend the sword profundity, it seems that I was wrong about you. You already comprehended the sword profundity early on." Earlier, when Duan Lingtian was following Zhou Di, the sword profundity was on the surface of his body. As a sword cultivator, the martial emperor Lingzan could easily notice that. Me too, I've overlooked it. It turns out that you're martial emperor Lingzan. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Martial Emperor Lingzan was no other than the person whom he had met at the summit of Lingzan Peak back then. Yang Wei. He still remembered the first time when he saw Yang Wei. The martial emperor had been controlling the sword with his spiritual energy. At that time, he thought that Yang Wei was an inscription master, so he had not checked his cultivation base with his spiritual energy. Looking back, Yang Wei was not necessarily an inscription master. Martial emperor powerhouses could send out their spiritual energy. Apart from controlling the sword with spiritual energy, they could even attack with the same spiritual energy and battle with it. It was nothing to them. It was because of your pointers then that I could finally improve my sword profundity by a level, and coincidentally, my cultivation base also broke through to the next level after I improved my sword profundity. Martial Emperor Lingzan, Yang Hui's gaze on Duan Lingtian was filled with kindness without the haughty air of a martial emperor powerhouse. Sit. After that, Yang Wei gestured to Duan Lingtian to sit at the stone table. Zhou Di, who was standing aside, was stunned. Although he knew that the purple-clad youth was his master's guest, he never imagined that the purple-clad youth would have given tips to his master and help him break through his sword profundity and cultivation base. Congratulations, master. After Zhou Di recovered from the surprise, he quickly congratulated Yang Wei while feeling a little excited. His master was originally a third-level martial emperor, so this breakthrough must have catapulted him to the fourth-level martial emperor stage. In addition to the breakthrough on the sword profundity, his master's current strength was sufficient to be considered upper mid-level among the martial emperor powerhouses and demon emperor powerhouses on the surface of the Cloud Continent. When he heard Zhou Di's congratulations, Yang Wei nodded faintly. Leave us. Master. However, Zhou Di did not move when he remembered the incident earlier. He decided to tell his master all about it. Who knew if his master's guest would put the blame on his junior brothers or not? After listening to Zhou Di's narration, Yang Wei frowned as he cried out, "Those two blind bastards." Following that, Yang Wei looked at Duan Lingtian and apologized, "Brother Lingtian, I'm sorry that my two direct disciples have offended you. I hope you can forgive them." If they were ordinary martial emperor's disciples or followers, he would not have felt anything even if he executed them. However, the problem was that both Song Ting and Zhang An were his direct disciples. He only had a total of 3 direct disciples. Hence, obviously, he would be reluctant to lose them. "You don't have to apologize, just do me a favor," Duan Lingtian said calmly. "I remember that you said you needed my help back then, Brother Lingtian. What is it, Brother Lingtian? What can I help you with?" Yang Wei nodded and asked curiously. "I want to know where I'm from," Duan Lingtian revealed. "Where you're from?" Yang Wei could not help but be stunned. "Brother Lingtian, don't you even know where you're from? My soul was injured for some reason and I've lost some of my memories, including where I'm from. You're a well-known martial emperor powerhouse on the Cloud Continent, adept in currying favors. I'm pretty sure you can help me with this." "I see, that's not a big deal." Yang Wei nodded and then looked at Zhou Di, who was leaving. "Order the others to do it and be sure to get it done properly." As a martial emperor powerhouse on the surface of the Cloud Continent, Yang Wei controlled Lingzan Peak and owned an intelligence team. With a single order, there would be many intelligence personnel working for him. "Yes," Zhou Di answered respectfully and then he left. "Brother Lingtian, don't worry. With Lingzan Peak's intelligence, we'll be able to know where you're from very quickly. I believe you're definitely not a mediocre nobody with such strength," Yang Wei assured. As a martial emperor powerhouse, he did not need a demon revelation mirror to know that the person before him was not a demon. Because he could see that Duan Lingtian was not a demon, he understood how outstanding he was. "Thank you." Duan Lingtian nodded towards Yang Wei. "Brother Lingtian, you're so courteous, I wouldn't have broken through my sword profundity so quickly if it weren't for your pointers. Moreover, my cultivation base improved because of the opportunity from the breakthrough I made with the sword profundity. Speaking of which, I should thank you," Yang Wei said while smiling. "Earlier, I heard from Zhou Di that Brother Lingtian could easily defeat him. Brother Lingtian, if you don't mind me asking, you don't seem to be a martial emperor." Yang Wei sized up Duan Lingtian and trailed off puzzledly. Ever since Yang Wei had broken through to the 4th-level martial emperor stage, his spiritual energy underwent a qualitative change. He could sense whether a person was a martial emperor powerhouse or not. According to the sense of his spiritual energy, the purple-clad youth in front of him did not seem to be a martial emperor but merely a martial monarch. Chapter 1255, Chapter 1256, Overseas Saint Islands. That's right, I'm still a distance away from the martial emperor stage. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised that martial emperor Lingzan, Yang Wei, could see that he was not a martial emperor. At the same time, he could guess that Yang Hui's cultivation base must be above the 4th level martial emperor stage. Only someone above the 4th level martial emperor stage could sense whether he was a martial emperor or not. Still a distance away from the martial emperor stage and you've already comprehended the sword profundity, brother Lingtian, you're really a bizarre genius in sword art, Yang Wei mused. He had long seen Duan Lingtian's attainment in the sword art before. Amazement and admiration rose from the bottom of his heart. Upon hearing Yang Hui's amusement, Duan Lingtian merely let out a faint smile before asking curiously, I've heard that it's not only Lingzan Peak that holds the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers. Other cultivation places of other martial emperors hold such a selection too, don't they? That's right, Yang Wei nodded. As long as they're well-known martial emperors or demon emperors in the Cloud Continent, they've all been recruiting disciples and followers recently too. Of course, like Lingzan Peak, their ultimate intention is to get their hands on outstanding martial emperors' disciples and even direct disciples. A martial emperor's disciple would have to have at least the strength at the peak of the martial monarch stage. The requirement for the martial emperor's direct disciples would be even higher. They would usually have to have at least half a foot in the martial emperor stage already. Let me guess, there's a reason all of you recruit outstanding martial emperor's disciples with such flourish, isn't there? Duan Lingtian voiced out his speculation. You guessed correctly, brother Lingtian. We do have a reason. Yang Hu nodded before turning glum a little. Actually, this time, the reason we recruited martial emperor's disciples and followers in such a way is that of an edict we received from the Overseas Saint Islands. Overseas Saint Islands? Edict? Duan Lingtian was perplexed. What's that? The Overseas Saint Islands are always very mysterious. It's no surprise that you've not heard of it before, Yang Wei explained. The Overseas Saint Islands are islands that are situated far away in the sea north of the Cloud Continent. Of course, there are many islands in the sea, but there are only 4 islands that are truly spacious and house rich origin stone resources. They are the 4 Great Overseas Saint Islands. Of all the 4 Great Overseas Saint Islands, one of them is the majestic one, with the remaining 3 Overseas Saint Islands surrounding it belonging to its affiliation, and this time, all of the martial emperors and demon emperors active on the surface of the Cloud Continent have all received an edict from one of the affiliated islands that's the closest to our Cloud Continent. That affiliated island is known as the Hidden Fog Island. Several years ago, the Hidden Fog Island already sent its messenger here to ask us to bring our 10 most outstanding disciples to join the Hidden Fog Martial Competition a few years later. Not long before this, the messenger of the Hidden Fog Island came again, telling us that the Hidden Fog Martial Competition will be moved forward a year earlier. For this reason, we've held our selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers a year earlier than planned, Yang Wei continued. Is the Hidden Fog Island scary? It can actually order all of you around. Duan Lingtian commented. The Hidden Fog Island is indeed scary, however, the reason we go along with the Hidden Fog Island's edict isn't because of how scary it is. Instead, we're targeting the rewards promised by the Hidden Fog Island for the Hidden Fog Martial Competition. If the Martial Emperor or Martial Demon's disciple performs outstandingly in the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, he or she will be able to get the Saint Stone. The moment Yang Wei mentioned the Saint Stone, his breathing became slightly more rapid right away. Saint Stone. Duan Lingtian was confused. That's right. The Saint Stone. Yang Wei nodded. To a certain extent, the Saint Stone is like the Origin Stone, however, even a supreme-grade Origin Stone is far less precious than a Saint Stone. If a martial emperor gets his hand on the Saint Stone, his cultivation base will advance at a tremendous pace with huge giant strides. I'll give you an example. If a first-level martial emperor gets his hand on a Saint Stone and absorbs all of the energy inside it, he'd be able to make a breakthrough to the second-level martial emperor in one fell swoop. Not only that, he would make it in no time at all, Yang Wei introduced. It's that amazing. Duan Lingtian was stunned. This was his first time hearing about this Saint Stone. Although his mind contained a broad and profound memory, there was no record about the Saint Stone at all. Now that he heard about the function of the Saint Stone, he could not help but be taken by surprise. Just one Saint Stone could allow a first-level martial emperor to make a breakthrough to the second-level martial emperor in one fell swoop in a short period. That was basically heaven-defying. That's exactly how amazing it is. Yang Hui's eyes were filled with longing. It was only when he looked at Duan Lingtian again that he retracted the lust in his eyes. By now, you must understand why we're so concerned about this edict issued by the Hidden Fog Island now, don't you? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. After finding out about the Saint Stone's function, he could understand the emotions of the group of martial emperors and demon emperors including Yang Wei. Which martial emperor and demon emperor did not want to raise their cultivation base rapidly? For the sake of this alone, let alone getting people to join the Hidden Fog martial competition, even if they were asked to do some other difficult things, they would not so much as frown at all. Where does this Saint Stone come from? Duan Lingtian was very curious. I don't really know as well where exactly, but one thing I'm sure of is that the Saint Stone isn't a product of the 4 overseas Saint Islands. I've even asked the Hidden Fog Islands messenger about this before, Yang Wei replied. Even though he still had 1,000 questions about the Saint Stone, Duan Lingtian knew that he was far from even scratching the surface of that level yet. Therefore, he did not proceed to ask any more questions. He believed that once he had reached that level, all of the questions in his heart would finally be answered. How much do you know about the Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian asked. I've only heard about the Hidden Fog Island after I broke through to the Martial Emperor, Yang Wei replied. The Hidden Fog Island is situated at the far north of the Cloud Continent's North Pole. It'd take 6 months for even a first-level Martial Emperor stage to reach the Hidden Fog Island from the Cloud Continent even if he flew at his fastest speed. 6 months for even a first-level Martial Emperor stage at his fastest speed. Duan Lingtian was amazed. That far. Distance isn't the main problem here, the main problem is the ocean that you'd have to cross on your journey to the Hidden Fog Island. You'll sometimes come across many demons in the sea and some of them are even on the Demon Emperor stage. Besides that, once the martial emperors in our Cloud Continent have raised their strength to a certain level till there's nothing left for them to pursue anymore, they'll usually go to the Hidden Fog Island and start a new journey there. For this reason, there are a lot of powerhouses on that island. Like me, even though I'm a 4th-level martial emperor, I'd still have to be humble if I go to the Hidden Fog Island. Yang Wei continued to explain and introduce everything about the Hidden Fog Island to Duan Lingtian. Have the martial emperors in the Cloud Continent been to the Hidden Fog Island before? Duan Lingtian asked. Right at this moment, he only felt that a mysterious world seemed to be opening its door gradually, waiting for him to enter. That's right. Yang Wei nodded before he continued again, casting aside all other people, just the messenger from the Hidden Fog Island who came to find me some time ago alone used to be a martial emperor who was very well known in the Cloud Continent. By the time his name was spread all over the Cloud Continent, I've only just made my breakthrough to the martial emperor stage. As Yang Wei reached the end, he sighed a little as if he recalled his own past. Since the Hidden Fog Island is willing to present the Saint Stone to all of you, it means that this Hidden Fog martial competition must be no ordinary martial competition. Do you know the main purpose of the Hidden Fog Island? Duan Lingtian asked. Since the Saint Stone was so precious, he doubted that anyone on the Hidden Fog Island would be so kind-hearted. There must be a huge conspiracy behind this Hidden Fog martial competition. UP dated B. yboxnovel.com. I've never heard of this before, but I guess the Hidden Fog Island must be seeking something, Yang Wei answered. As a martial emperor, of course, he was no idiot and could easily pinpoint this out. Is there any requirement for the people who enter this Hidden Fog martial competition? Duan Lingtian asked again. Yes. Yang Wei nodded. According to the Hidden Fog Island's messenger, everyone who joins the Hidden Fog martial competition must have their age measured using the age measuring pearl. Participants must be below 70 years old. Duan Lingtian had some knowledge about the age measuring pearl. He knew that it could measure someone's age up till 70 years old at the most. It could not measure the age of somebody who was over 70 years old. Yes, Yang Wei affirmed again. Then, the two of them continued with idle chat. After that, Yang Wei arranged for accommodation for Duan Lingtian to stay in, just right beside his own residence. It was a small, standalone courtyard on a tiny stone platform. There was a little house in the courtyard. Sending Duan Lingtian all the way to the door of the little house, Yang Wei told Duan Lingtian, Brother Lingtian, I'll do my utmost best to help check your origins, however, I hope you won't spread the story about the Saint Stone. In fact, even my first direct disciple doesn't know about the existence of it at all. I understand. Of course, he knew Yang Hui's intention of keeping the Saint Stone a secret. It was because he did not want to let the martial emperor's disciples under his command think that he asked them to risk their lives for the stone. In that case, I'll bid my goodbye first. Yang Wei proceeded to leave. Wait a minute, however, Duan Lingtian suddenly called out to him in a timely manner. Yes, anything else? Yang Wei asked. There's one thing that I hope you could help me with, Duan Lingtian answered. Just tell me, Yang Wei straightforwardly said. There's a pair of twin brothers with the surname Nangong among the people joining the selection of the martial emperors, disciples and followers. Right now, they've already passed the second round of the selection and it's already certain that they'll become your martial emperor's followers. If possible, I'd like to ask you to take care of them, Duan Lingtian told Yang Wei. There you're, looking at him. Before Yang Wei could finish his question, he was already cut off by the young man in purple. They're my friends. Since they're your friends, it means that they're my friends too. Don't worry, brother Lingtian. I won't mistreat them, Yang Wei quickly replied. Chapter 1256. After Yang Wei left, Duan Lingtian sat in front of the stone table in the courtyard and muttered to himself, the Hidden Fog Martial Competition. Earlier, when Yang Wei mentioned the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, he had intended to ask him to join it on behalf of Lingzan Peak. In addition to that, Yang Wei was willing to give all the Saint Stones that he had obtained to him. In the case of Yang Wei, other than obtaining the Saint Stones in the Hidden Fog Martial Competition, he wanted Lingzan Peak to overpower the people of the other martial emperors and demon emperors from the Cloud Continent. There were many strong martial emperors and demon emperors in the Cloud Continent. Of course, this would mean that they would always compare among one another a lot. Especially now that Yang Hui's strength had been greatly elevated, he would be a walking joke if the disciples under his command did not perform well in the Hidden Fog Martial Competition. For a martial emperor, prestige was always very important. Bastard, do you know about the Saint Stone? Duan Lingtian asked the soul hidden inside his body, Wang Ba's soul. He had a feeling that Wang Ba would know about it. However, no matter how he called for him, Wang Ba did not respond at all. It was as though he had entered a deep slumber. That's weird, I haven't heard from that guy for more than 6 months already. Seeing that Wang Ba did not respond for a long time, Duan Lingtian stopped calling him and stood up before going back to his room and sat on his bed cross-legged to start his cultivation. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Divine Dragon Form. The Divine Dragon Form was the 9th and last form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique. It could assist its user to boost his Martial Monarch stage cultivation base to the Martial Emperor stage. In the past 6 months, Duan Lingtian had recultivated his cultivation base and right now, his cultivation base was even greater than it had been in his prime time. Previously, Duan Lingtian had only been on the 4th level Martial Monarch stage. In contrast, after 6 months of cultivation, his cultivation base improved swiftly with the help of the rebirth pill's tyrannical medicinal efficacy. Today, he had already reached the 6th level Martial Monarch stage. The 7th level Martial Monarch stage now beckoned to him as a lamp did to a moth. Of course, the reason his cultivation base could have such a great elevation was not entirely due to the tyrannical medicinal efficacy of his rebirth pill, it was mostly because of the construction after the destruction took place. Construction after destruction was a difficult concept to grasp, but Duan Lingtian could clearly feel the great changes these 3 words brought him. After his Dantian was restored, his cultivation had indeed yielded twice the results with only half the effort. It was even more extraordinary after adding the rebirth energy's medicinal efficacy. Of course, the most extraordinary elevation Duan Lingtian's strength underwent these 6 months was not actually his cultivation base. Instead, it was the 2 profundities that he comprehended, the fused profundity and his sword profundity. Perhaps it's because my soul has been suppressed by the soul remnant energy from the soul devil seal tablet to the point that it went through some transformation. As a consequence, my effort to comprehend the 2 profundities ended up yielding twice the results with half the effort. In the end, Duan Lingtian could only come up with such a conclusion. This seemed to be the only plausible reason. Slowly, Duan Lingtian did not overthink anymore. He continued to cultivate and comprehend his 2 profundities. He believed that with the cultivation speed that he had now, it would not take long for him to make a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage. While he was cultivating, Lingzan Peak had also started to activate its intelligence channel to check for Duan Lingtian's origins. As the center of knowledge, they carried out an inch-by-inch probe. As for the selection of the martial emperor's disciples and followers of Lingzhan Peak, it was still in an ongoing process. What was worth mentioning was that when Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi were about to join the third round of the selection, Zhang An brought them away. As the Nangong twins followed behind him, Nangong Yi asked anxiously, "Lord Zhang An, where are you bringing us to?" He was worried that Zhang An would make his move on the twins just to seek revenge on Duan Lingtian. Upon hearing Nangong Yi's words, Zhang An started in surprise before he hastily shook his hand. "Brother, please don't call me Lord. I can't bear that at all. Not only that, I know that you both have the surname, Nangong, but I wonder what your names are." At the same time, he looked at the Nangong twins again with a friendly expression. What a joke! The twins were guests that his master, Martial Emperor Lingzhan of Lingzhan Peak, had asked him to bring over. If his master found out that these two addressed him as Lord, he would have a hard time later. Zhang An's friendliness took the twins by surprise. Nevertheless, after some time, they finally returned to their senses and introduced themselves separately. Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi. Right then, they could faintly guess in their hearts that the reason this martial emperor's direct disciple, Zhang An, was so polite towards them was most likely because of Duan Lingtian. "Oh, so your brother Nangong Chen and brother Nangong Yi, if you two have such a high opinion of me, call me Big Brother Zhang then. What do you think?" Zhang An grinned. "Big Brother Zhang, are you bringing us to see Duan Lingtian?" Nangong Yi, who had guessed why Zhang An was so polite towards them, felt at ease and justified right away. At the same time, he could not help but ask curiously. "No," Zhang An shook his head. "No, not only Nangong Yi, but even Nangong Chen was also taken aback. Just now, Master told me to bring you over to see him," Zhang An explained. Boom! The moment these words left Zhang An's mouth, it was like thunder had struck down on the Nangong twins, stunning them. Without a doubt, the master that he was referring to was none other than the owner of Lingzhan Peak, Martial Emperor Lingzhan. Right now, Martial Emperor Lingzhan wanted to see them. When the two of them finally snapped back to reality, they exchanged glances with each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. Nangong Chen was still slightly more collected. Nangong Yi, on the other hand, had a horrified expression on his face. Although he really wanted to meet Martial Emperor Lingzhan, it had never crossed his mind that he would be able to meet him so quickly. Of course, he knew that all of this was thanks to Duan Lingtian. At the south of the inner land, two figures rose up into the air all the way to a dangerously steep mountain peak in the distance, Lingtian Peak. Lingtian Peak was where the Lingtian sect was. Soon, the two figures arrived at Lingtian Peak and their identities became clear at once. One was a teenage girl in daffodil yellow while the other one was a little girl in white. The eyes of the teenage girl were gleaming with a mischievous luster. As for the little girl, her cute, little, naive face was taut, making her look like a miniature adult. "Sister Shui Nai, what should we do now? How should we find brother?" Looking at the teenager, the little girl asked. She was none other than the small white python, Little White. The teenage girl in yellow was Han Shui Nai. After they had received some news about Duan Lingtian in the Lost Stone Forest, they proceeded to search around, but could not find any trace of him at all. In the end, they had no choice but to give up temporarily and search for some other alternatives. "Let's go look for Little Gold and Little Black, perhaps it's time for us to make a slightly bigger commotion now." A brilliance flashed across Han Shui Nai's mischievous eyes. A bigger commotion? Little White was perplexed, but she still followed Han Shui Nai to look for Little Gold and Little Black. She knew that once she met Little Gold and Little Black, she would know what the bigger commotion Sister Shui Nai meant. After Han Shui Nai gathered together with the three little fellows and plotted their scheme, a plan that would take the entire Cloud continent by surprise started to form. When Luoping and Zhang San knew about this plan, the two vice-sect leaders of Lingtian Peak, they were so taken by shock that they could not utter a word for a long time. This plan eventually started to be put into action soon. Han Shui Nai, Little White, Little Black, and Little Gold went separate ways and left the Cloud continent, each going in different directions. Not long after that, a series of shocking news started to spread out. One by one, many first-rate forces started to announce that they would become the affiliated force of the Lingtian sect. Other than having to hand over a great amount of origin stones to the Lingtian sect every year, each of them would also hand their most outstanding disciple to them. These outstanding disciples from every force joined the Lingtian sect one after another and became a member of the sect. The Ling Tian sect that was originally empty became busy with activity right away. Those four little ancestors, there really, when Zhang San and Luo Ping, the two vice-sect leaders of the Ling Tian sect, got together, their faces did not have any other expression except for shock. How did Duan Ling Tian come to know these little freaks? After Chen Xiaoshui found out about them, he could not help but let out a wry smile as well. Young master, the Ling Tian sect is no longer the same as before. I think that soon after this, Miss Han Shuinai, Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold will be able to unify all of the first-rate forces in the south of the inner land. At the summit of Ling Tian Peak, Shang Quan stood muttering to himself, now, we'll just wait for you and Miss Tianwu to come back. That's right, master, please come back as soon as possible. Standing beside Shang Quan, the gold thug was also waiting for his master, the sect leader of Ling Tian Peak, to come back. Hi, gold thug boy. Suddenly, a voice resonated from afar. When the gold thug and Shang Quan returned to their senses, someone was already standing right in front of them. It was a little girl dressed in gold. Little Gold. Upon seeing the newcomer, Shang Quan's eyes brightened up right away. As for the gold thug, he shivered for no reason and asked with a long face, young miss, is there any reason you're looking for me? He was afraid of this little girl in gold from the bottom of his heart. Of course, it's for a good reason. She was none other than Little Gold, the jade-eyed heavenly mouse who used to follow Duan Ling Tian the last time. Gee, good reason. The gold thug looked at her, full of doubt. Slap. However, before he could realize what was happening, Little Gold had already given him a good slap on his forehead. Come on, gold thug boy, you still don't believe me. And no, of course not. The gold thug immediately recoiled in fear before answering faintly. In front of Little Gold, despite being a hell golden hound, he turned as docile as a house cat. Take this. With a lift of her hand, Little Gold handed a shining pill-like item that dazzled brilliantly to the gold thug. Why, young miss, this is. The gold thug was stunned at first. However, after he carefully studied the item that Little Gold passed to him, his eyes could not help but narrow right away. His body began to tremble for no reason as well. Beast Core. He gaped at Little Gold, trembling. Why, young miss, this is AD Demon Emperor's Beast Core. Chapter 1257. Usually, a beast core could only be formed in the body of a powerful fierce beast or a demon beast. However, usually, only a fierce beast or the demon beast who stood at the summit of the Cloud Continent, which was also known as the Demon Emperor, could have left a beast core behind upon its death. Everyone knew that once a fierce beast broke through to the void-prying stage, it would undergo a transformation to become a demon beast. The moment the fierce beast transformed into a demon beast, the beast core in his body would form a tight bond with its body's energy that could also be referred to as a symbiotic relationship. If one did not make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage, this symbiotic relationship would not be able to be called off. For this reason, even if an ordinary demon beast was killed, it would not leave behind a beast core because at that very second, the beast core would be shattered along with the dissipation of its energy. Only a powerful demon beast who had made a breakthrough to the martial emperor could separate the beast core in its body's energy. By that time, if it were killed, the beast core would become a gift to somebody else as well. If a demon emperor's beast core was consumed by a demon monarch, it would allow him to raise his cultivation base at a swift speed. As long as the demon monarch, whose cultivation base was originally high, could comprehend the emperor stage profundity, it would not be difficult for him to make a breakthrough to the demon emperor stage with the help of the demon emperor's beast core. Of course, only a demon monarch could consume the demon emperor's beast core directly. If a human martial monarch wanted to consume it, he could just ask a grade 1 alchemist to spend some time to make it into a pill along with some other ingredients. Of course, the success rate of forming such a pill was very low as well, even if it was created by a very outstanding grade 1 alchemist. For this reason, the boost that a demon emperor's beast core offered to a human martial monarch was not as great as what a demon monarch would receive. That's right, this is a demon emperor's beast core. In the face of the excited gold thug, Little Gold nodded her head. At the same time, she passed the demon emperor's beast core to the gold thug. When the gold thug had taken the beast core in his hands, both of his hands trembled even more violently. Demon Emperor's beast core. By the side, Shang Quan was astonished. Little Gold, you've killed AD Demon Emperor. Yes, Little Gold nodded and answered casually, I killed a brainless fella. Wasn't your target the first-rate force of the south of the inner land? Why did you attack a demon emperor instead? Shang Quan was confused. Well, my target was indeed a first-rate force, but that demon emperor seemed to have owed a favor to that force since many years ago. For this reason, it rushed out in a timely manner, wanting to protect that force. He dared to actually cast an attack at me first, but in the end, I killed him instead, Little Gold answered as though she was reciting an unimportant manner. I can't believe that a first-rate force actually has a demon emperor protecting them. Shang Quan mused. Well, it's only a first-level demon emperor, Little Gold answered nonchalantly. Although she did not make it clear, one could still hear the disdain in her tone. Only a first-level demon emperor. Upon hearing Little Gold's words, Shang Quan and the gold thug, who had just returned to his senses, exchanged glances with each other. They both stood rooted to the ground in a daze. To them, even a first-level demon emperor was already enough to crush them with just one finger. Young miss, I'll go back and cultivate first. After receiving the demon emperor's beast core, Gold Thug was itching to go back to cultivate. He believed that it would not take him long to make a breakthrough to the 9th-level demon emperor stage successfully with the help of this demon emperor's core beast. Once he had comprehended the emperor stage profundity, he would be able to make a breakthrough to the demon emperor stage in one fell swoop and become a demon emperor. Alright, go cultivate as soon as possible then. After you've made your breakthrough to the demon emperor stage, I'll bring you out abroad for some trips. There are many demon emperors abroad, and when we reach there, you can get yourself more demon emperor's beast cores. Little Gold nodded. As she reached the end of her sentence, her eyes gleamed brightly. Yes. Upon hearing this, the gold thug's blood was boiling with excitement as well. Hastily, he left and quickly went to cultivate. After the gold thug left, Shang Quan studied Little Gold up and down and asked curiously, Little Gold, you can even kill a first-level demon emperor now, what level is your cultivation base now actually? It had never crossed his mind that the plain-looking little gold mouse last time had now come to achieve such an achievement. She elicited an inexplicable sense of amazement from the bottom of his heart. Young master, please come back as fast as possible, come back and look at the 3 little fellas and Miss Shui Nai as well, Shang Quan muttered in his heart. In the face of Shang Quan's question, Little Gold merely smiled mysteriously and did not answer. Whoosh! The next moment, Little Gold vanished from the air in front of Shang Quan. It was apparent that she had already left. Upon seeing this, Shang Quan only smiled as he shook his head. With the move from Han Shui Nai, Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold, the first-rate forces in the south of the inner land were subdued one by one. Each of them soon became affiliated forces of the Ling Tian sect. At once, the Ling Tian sect's fame became very influential in the southern area of the inner land in the cloud continent like the sun in mid-sky. As for the rest of the first-rate forces that had not fallen yet, each of them was overwhelmed with fear, for they knew that not long in the future, the Ling Tian sect would make its move on them. The Ling Tian sect is crazy. Does it intend to unify the entire southern area of the inner land? At every part of the southern area of the inner land, people from all over the place speculated. Indeed, the crazy Ling Tian sect did intend to do that right then. However, just as the first-rate forces in the south of the inner land were frightened out of their wits, Han Shui Nai and the other 3 had returned to the Ling Tian sect in unison as though they had already planned it out. Indeed, they had already planned it beforehand. In the next period, all of you mustn't be careless. You must patrol everywhere of the Ling Tian peak more. Calculating the time now, I think they'll make their way here soon, Han Shui Nai told Little Black, Little White, and Little Gold. In her words, it was as though she was worried that somebody would come to attack the Ling Tian sect. Yes, Sister Shui Nai. Little Black and the other 2 nodded their heads obediently. Compared to their decisiveness to kill outside, they seemed to have transformed into other people. Time continued to pass by quietly. 7 days quickly passed by in just the blink of an eye. Whoosh! The air world outside Ling Tian Peak as a figure appeared out of thin air. This was a plain-looking old man in gray. However, his eyes were brimming with radiating vigor and his face was very calm, as though he would not even bat an eye even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. Suddenly, his gaze turned sharp instantly as he glared at the dangerously steep peak not far away before he muttered, Ling Tian sect. The next second, he disappeared again, and by the time he showed up, he was already on the other side of the Ling Tian peak. Hold it right there. However, before he entered Ling Tian peak, he was already blocked by somebody. The voice that had shouted out loudly at him was a young little girl's voice, stunning him for a while. By the time he had already returned to his senses, he noticed that the person who blocked his pathway was an inconspicuous little girl in gold. Demon Emperor. However, he did not look down on her although she appeared to be just a little girl in front of her. Instead, his face turned grave right away. In the face of his questioning tone, Little Gold did not give a damn at all. Instead, she asked nonchalantly, "Are you the old man from the Han clan? Are you the one who killed Han Jing?" Cold brilliance shone from his eyes as he asked in a deep voice. Han Jing. Little Gold was taken aback at first before returning to her senses. "Looks like you're really the old man from the Han clan. Are you here to avenge the brainless guy?" As she reached the end of her sentence, her eyes gleamed brilliantly with chilliness. "No matter who you are, if you kill a member of my Han clan, you'll have to pay the price," he said nonchalantly, his words filled with a tone that allowed no doubt. Before Little Gold returned to her senses, an apathetic voice resonated from far. "Really?" By the time the voice entered the ears of the old man and Little Gold, a figure had already appeared in a timely manner. It was a teenage girl in yellow who appeared to be about 15 or 16 years old. The face that appeared to be slightly childish looking was pretty. In just one glance, one could easily know that this girl would grow up to become a beauty so enchanting that she would topple nations. She had a pair of mischievous eyes. One could easily see that she was a playful person. However, right now, her expression was slightly glum as though the sky was filled with clouds and was about to rain. "It's better for an unrelated person to leave now. Don't blame me if the city gates catch fire." Looking at the teenage girl, the old man in gray warned in a calm tone. His words were filled with threats. Unrelated person. After the teenage girl studied him for some time, she finally replied calmly, "What if I was the one who killed that person that you said?" At once, his expression changed in a flash. Murderous intent radiated from his face as though he was about to devour somebody. "Sister Shuai, leave this old man to me," Little Gold looked at the yellow-clad teenage girl and said in anticipation. The yellow-clad teenage girl was none other than Han Shuai. As Han Shuai had said, Han Jing, the Han clan's powerhouse, did indeed die in her hands that time. "I'll give him to you if you want him," Han Shuai replied as though she was not at all concerned that she was not the one going against the old man in gray by herself. "Thank you, Sister Shuai." Upon receiving Han Shuai's approval, Little Gold's eyes lit up right away. Then, staring at the old man glaring fixedly at Han Shuai, she snarled coldly, "Hey, old man. I'm your opponent." The moment the words left her mouth, she made her move. As though she had transformed into a golden lightning bolt, she blasted out towards the old man who snapped back to reality and started to be locked in a battle with Little Gold. Both of them were evenly matched in first in the battle. However, as time continued to pass, Little Gold soon fell into a disadvantageous position and appeared to be very wretched. The gray-clad old man, on the other hand, seized this chance to pursue and cast his attack on her, intending to kill Little Gold, the little girl who looked not more than 10 years old. "Help me, Sister Shuai." At once, Little Gold asked Han Shuai for help hastily. This was not a time to be playful now. If she really got killed at that second, it would mean that everything would be over for her now. HMPH. Almost at the second Little Gold's words left her mouth, Han Shuai snorted in a low voice and raised her hand. No other movement could be seen from her. Bang! A loud bang resonated. The old man who was pursuing Little Gold suddenly was sent flying by a blast. As he flew out, he left behind a trail of blooming bloody flowers. It was blood that gushed out of his mouth. The air's shadowless palm. How did you know my Han clan's clan-suppressing martial skill? Soon, horror dawned on the old man who had finally managed to come to a halt with difficulty after being sent flying. Chapter 1258. The shadowless air palm was the clan-suppressing martial skill from the ancient Han clan in the Cloud Continent. This set of martial skills dominated all heaven-rank advanced martial skills. Not everybody in the Han clan could cultivate it. As one of the strongest people in the Han clan, the old man in gray was very sure about this. He was also one of the few people in the Han clan who had cultivated the shadowless air palm. Not only did he know that the shadowless air palm was a powerful martial skill that ruled all other heaven-rank advanced martial skills, but he also knew that this set of martial skills could be considered a saint-grade martial tactic. The saint-grade martial tactic was a saying passed down in the Han clan a long time ago. It was said that it originated from a faraway land and referred to martial skills that prevailed over heaven-rank advanced martial skills. The old man, who was awfully pale, was filled with astonishment and disbelief as he glared directly at Han Shuai. Shadowless air palm. Upon hearing the old man's words, Han Shuai was first stunned before giving him a disdainful smile. Are you sure that the one that I cast was the shadowless air palm? The moment her words left her mouth, without waiting for the old man to respond, Han Shui-nai made her move once again. A cold aura spread out in the air and burst into a biting cold as piercing iciness radiated across. At the same time, gales of cold wind brushed past them as well. Boom, 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 a series of loud bangs resonated. The light shield rose from around the old man's body and crumbled like dried leaves. In just a heartbeat, he was already swept by the gale of icy aura coming from all directions, transforming him into an ice sculpture. One could faintly see that there was a streak of clear palm prints around the old man's body in the ice sculpture as though he had been slapped many times. Right now, do you still think that this is the shadowless air palm? Han Shui-nai asked nonchalantly. At the same time, she gradually lifted a hand up. The ice sculpture around the old man's body began to melt into nothingness as if it had never once appeared. Spurt, barf, the moment the ice sculpture around his body disappeared, the old man shuddered before he opened his mouth and blood gushed out of it. Staggering as though he was about to fall, he teetered at the gates of death. It was only until he took out a pill and swallowed it that color started to creep upon his face once again. If Duan Lingtian had been here, he would definitely have been able to tell that this healing medicinal pill that the old man in grey just consumed was none other than the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill that he was very familiar with. It isn't the shadowless air palm. As Han Shui-nai's words resonated by his ear, the old man in grey could not help but shiver as he looked at her with a horrified expression. His heart was completely consumed with shock. Even though it looks like the shadowless air palm, it's a martial skill that's much more powerful than the shadowless air palm. It's a saint-grade martial tactic. A freaking saint-grade martial tactic. A saint-grade martial tactic that's even more powerful than the shadowless air palm. Who is she? As far as I know, only the two great ancient clans in the entire Cloud Continent, including our Han clan, have the saint-grade martial tactic. But she actually knows a saint-grade martial tactic too. Not only that, it's a saint-grade martial tactic that's far more powerful than our Han clan's shadowless air palm. Don't tell me she actually came from that place. As thoughts raced through the old man's mind, he seemed to have recalled something. He appeared to be looking at a ghost as he stared at the teenage girl. As one of the two great ancient clans in the Cloud Continent that had a legacy of 10,000 years, the Han clan knew a lot of things that other ordinary Cloud Continent powerhouses did not. There were other continents other than the Cloud Continent. Besides that, there was a secret journal that was passed down to every generation of the Han clan. It held journal records that only a disciple from the Han clan lineage was qualified to read. According to the journal, the first clan leader of the Han clan, who was also the ancestor that established the Han clan, did not actually originate from the Cloud Continent. Instead, he came from another continent. According to that Han clan ancestor, where he originated from, even a martial emperor was stood only at the peak of the mortal stage. Many people transcended the mortal stage in that continent, which was called Dao Martial Saint Land. I've heard from Qing Nu a while ago that there's a clan here in the Cloud Continent that can roughly be considered as part of our clan's branch. It's also known as the Han clan. Somehow, Han Shui-nai had started speaking nonchalantly and nobody knew whether she was talking to the old man in grey or to herself. The fact that the shadowless air palm has been passed down means that this person who founded the Han clan must be a collateral disciple of our clan, no matter how useless he was. Boom! The words that Han Shui-nai seemed to mutter to herself entered the ears of the old man, striking him like a thunderbolt. He trembled all over as he asked, Miss, did you just say that our Han clan's ancestor was actually your clan's collateral disciple? As a lineal disciple of the Han clan and the former clan leader, his knowledge about the Han clan surpassed anyone else in the clan. According to the record written in the journal the ancestor left behind, when he was still in the Dao Martial Saint Land or something, he was indeed a collateral disciple of a large clan. Although the ancestor didn't describe the clan in detail, he did mention that the huge clan carried a big weight in the Dao Martial Saint Land. The moment he thought about this, his body started to quiver in fear when he looked at Han Shui-nai again. After undergoing the saint-grade martial tactic that this teenage girl cast, he faintly suspected that this person must have come from the mysterious Dao Martial Saint Land. The saint-grade martial tactic that she cast was even more powerful than the saint-grade martial tactic that their Han clan and the other ancient clan possessed. The saint-grade martial tactic that both clans possessed originated from the mysterious Dao Martial Saint Land. That was the reason why he would come to such a conclusion. After hearing her mutter to herself and the message recorded in the journal that their Han clan ancestor left behind, he assumed that she must have come from the huge clan just like his ancestor. Not only that, the Saint-grade martial tactic that she cast had some resemblance of the shadowless air palm, although it appeared more like an upgraded version. Connecting all these points together, he had no choice but to suspect Han Shui-nai's identity. He felt that she might really be related to their Han clan ancestor and even their Han clan. What, do you think I'd be so utterly shameless to forge a connection with your Han clan? Upon hearing the old man's query, Han Shui-nai snapped in disdain. If I remember correctly, given your strength, even if you aren't the most powerful person in your clan, you must be at least in the top 3. Do you think that my strength isn't even comparable to the strongest powerhouse in your Han clan? Her sentence dripped with sarcasm. No, I didn't mean that, miss, I really didn't mean that. The old man became panic-stricken right away. As she said, although his strength was not the most powerful in the Han clan, he was still among the top 3. However, even if she faced the strongest person in the Han clan, he would not turn out to be so weak to the point that he could not attack her at all. Sister Shui-nai, why are you talking so much to him? If I were you, I'd have killed him directly. Little Gold stood by the side and piped up nonchalantly. At the same time, she glared at the old man. Hi, didn't you want to avenge Han Jing? My sister Shui-nai is right here now. Go on, make your move, hurry. Upon hearing Little Gold's words, the old man's cheeks that had just returned to its normal pallor turned white again. Hastily, he quickly replied, it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. The reason I came here is just to learn how Han Jing died. Since you killed him, miss, I'm sure that's because he was the one who dug his own grave. He deserved to die. Looking at Han Shui-nai, he said with a horrified expression. On top of that, we Han clan can be said to be closely related to you as well, miss. Please forgive me this time for the sake of our Han clan ancestor. He pleaded. Is your surname Han? Han Shui-nai asked coolly. Yes, I'm called Han Tong, the old man hastily replied, not daring to slack at all. Well, all right, I can do that, but you must make up for your mistakes, she retorted. Miss Shui-nai. Upon hearing Han Shui-nai's words, Little Gold frowned for no reason. She itched to exterminate this old man who had almost killed her just now. Little Gold, there's still some use keeping him alive, Han Shui-nai reassured. Little Gold nodded. Despite still being slightly unhappy, she dared not disobey Han Shui-nai at all. Miss, please tell me. Please tell me how, miss. Han Tong begged humbly as though he was afraid that she would regret her decision. Activate your clan's forces and help me search for someone, Han Shui-nai replied. At Lingzan Peak, another 2 standalone wooden houses were erected on the tiny platform beside Martial Emperor Lingzan's residence. It was evident that they had been newly erected not long ago. The occupants of the 2 wooden houses were none other than the 2 brothers, Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi. Ever since the last time they came to meet Martial Emperor Lingzan, they had started staying here. According to Martial Emperor Lingzan, since they were both Duan Lingtian's friends, they were then his friends too. For this reason, he found it awkward to keep them as his disciples or followers, but he allowed them to remain in the Lingzan Peak as guests. Though they were the guests, they were allowed to enjoy all of the benefits of a martial emperor's direct disciple. This took the 2 Nangong twins by shock and joy. Shock by just how highly Martial Emperor Lingzan thought of Duan Lingtian, and joy for being able to stay at the Lingzan Peak to enjoy all of the benefits of a martial emperor's direct disciple. According to the Martial Emperor Lingzan, they could stay at the Lingzan Peak for as long as they liked. If they did not want to stay anymore, they could leave anytime they wanted. Even after they had left, they could come back anytime they wanted to. The other wooden house erected on the stone platform not far away was the residence of Duan Lingtian. However, ever since the Nangong twins arrived here, they had never seen Duan Lingtian coming out of his residence before. For this reason, they had never been able to meet with him all along. Days continued to pass. Today, Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzan, left his own residence and came to the front of Duan Lingtian's residence. Brother Lingtian, Yang Wei called out as a greeting. The next instance, the door to the wooden house that Duan Lingtian was opened wide before he flew out of it. Standing in front of Yang Wei, he asked, "Yes. Is there any news now?" Duan Lingtian's eyes brightened right away. Chapter 1259. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, the fact that Yang Wei had taken the initiative to look for him at his residence most likely meant that he had managed to find out about his origin. However, he soon realized that he had overestimated Yang Wei. No, not yet. Yang Wei knew what he was asking about. Therefore, he immediately shook his head. Brother Ling Tian, I'm sure you know it just as well as I do. Just the inner land of the Cloud Continent alone already occupies a vast area of land. I'd need more time to explore your origin. Duan Ling Tian nodded his head in slight disappointment before asking again, then, is there anything you've come looking for me for? Yes, Yang Wei nodded before he replied, I'm here to give you a heads up, Brother Ling Tian, we'll be making our move in 10 days. Making our move? Duan Ling Tian was stunned at first before he finally realized what he was talking about. Quickly, he asked, the Hidden Fog Island? Yes, all right then, Duan Ling Tian responded. Then, seeing that Yang Wei did not go any further, he proceeded to return to his own room and continue his cultivation, working on the two profundities. His strength was making progress at a breakneck rate. 10 days was not a long stretch for an ordinary person, let alone Duan Ling Tian who was cultivating all night and all day. In just the blink of an eye, 10 days flew by. Walking out of the wooden house, Duan Ling Tian shook his heavy head as he muttered to himself, I've regained more of my memory now, but I still don't seem to be able to recall who I am yet. Duan Ling Tian. Not long after he had stepped out of the wooden house, two familiar voices rang in his ear immediately. As he squinted to look at the direction of the voice, he realized that it was Nangongyi who was calling him. There was another cool and aloof figure standing right beside Nangongyi. It was none other than Nangong Chen. Why are you two here? Upon seeing them, Duan Ling Tian was slightly taken aback. It's all thanks to you that we're able to cultivate here. Nangongyi beamed before telling him about the story of how Zhong'an, Martial Emperor Lingzhan's third direct disciple, brought them there and how the Martial Emperor had given them special care. Oh, I see. Duan Ling Tian finally understood. That's quite good too. You two can stay here in Lingzhan Peak as you wish, and with the way the Martial Emperor's direct disciple is treating you, I'm sure your achievements will go far in the future. Duan Ling Tian, we heard that Lord Martial Emperor is going to bring 10 people, including his 3 direct disciples under his command, somewhere far today. Now that you've come out of your house at this time, does it mean that you're going with him too? Nangongyi asked in curiosity. Brother Ling Tian, it's time for us to go now. Before he had the time to reply, a familiar voice resonated from the sky. Yes, Lord Martial Emperor. The Nangong twins immediately could tell that this voice belonged to Martial Emperor Lingzhan. At the same time, they were also sure that Duan Ling Tian would indeed be going away with the Martial Emperor. After bidding goodbye to the twins, Duan Ling Tian proceeded to fly towards the voice. Soon, he saw the owner of Lingzhan sect. It was Yang Wei, Martial Emperor Lingzhan. Yang Wei stood right there with 3 more people following behind him. Duan Ling Tian was no stranger to these 3. They were none other than Yang Hui's 3 direct disciples, who were also the only 3 direct disciples of the Lingzhan sect. They were Zhou Di, Song Ting, and Zhang En. Another 6 people followed behind the trio. These 6 were all unfamiliar faces to Duan Ling Tian, as he did not seem to have seen them before. Of course, even if he did, he might have forgotten about them already. Seeing Duan Ling Tian approaching, Yang Wei welcomed him to stay by his side with a friendly gesture. As for the 3 direct disciples behind him, Zhou Di and Zhang En both nodded and smiled at him by way of greeting. Only Song Ting maintained a glum face ever since he showed up. It was already good enough that he did not battle it out with him. Lord Ling Tian. Following Zhou Di's order, the remaining 6 people also bowed and greeted Duan Ling Tian courteously. They even called him Lord, in a respectful manner. Right then, Duan Ling Tian was indeed worthy to be called that title, at the very least, in front of these people. Let's go. As Yang Wei motioned, a tremendous and vast invisible energy spread out tyrannically and soon enveloped everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, in just the blink of an eye. The energy did not leave anybody out. In the next instance, Duan Ling Tian saw a blur in front of his eyes. A second later, he felt his body flying out without him even having to control it. Only then did he realize that Yang Wei was guiding him and the rest on their journey, which made sense to him. If they made their journey at a speed that followed the one with the weakest cultivation base, let alone the fact that they had no idea how long it would take them to reach the Hidden Fog Island, they did not even have an inkling how long it would take them to leave the Cloud Continent. Compared to Duan Ling Tian's temporary shock, the rest of the people other than Zhou Di and the other 2 Martial Emperor direct disciples froze in shock for a long time the second they were brought flying into the air. Brother Ling Tian, I think the next time when we come back here, you'll be able to find out about your origin soon. Yang Wei exclaimed on the journey. Yang Wei actually felt a little guilty about not being able to help him find out his origin after so long. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. Having been mentally prepared for a while, he did not find it surprising. My memory is slowly recovering as time goes by, perhaps like what bastard told me, my memory will automatically fully recover after a year, he thought to himself. The Hidden Fog Island, the Overseas Saint Islands, I'm looking forward to it. Somehow, his thoughts got carried away. As a flash of brilliance appeared in his eyes, he was thrilled to explore the place they were heading to. And that exquisite jade box that the cheapskate father left for me, I should be able to open it with my strength now, shouldn't I? Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Then, raising his hand, a delicate jade box appeared in his palms. Just as he tried to open the jade box, a series of figures rose in the north of the inner land of the Cloud Continent, where snow covered everything. There were a total of 11 people, all of them women. Let's go, the chief announced. At the same time, an invisible energy gushed out of her body and enveloped the 10 women behind her, leading them towards the north at a rapid speed. Among the 10 women, the most seductive-looking and enchanting woman who had an unparalleled beauty with a provocative body told her companion, "Ka, it's all thanks to your Frost God's sword technique. If it hadn't been for it, we wouldn't have been able to become the Martial Emperor's direct disciples the moment we arrived at Yuhan Valley, let alone have this opportunity to go see the foreign world abroad." Her companion's beauty was in no way inferior to the former, but her temperament was a completely different story. Unlike the allure and the rapture of the former, she appeared to be more like a beautiful girl next door. Chapter 1260. At the northwest polar region of Cloud Continent, 11 figures rose up to the sky. Among the 11 people, an old man with a heavy build stood at the lead. Although his eyes were awe-inspiring, it was not angry-looking. He appeared majestic, clad entirely in a gold robe. There were 10 people following behind the old man. Among the 10, one of them was a woman, and the remaining were men. However, it seemed like the woman held the highest position among the 10 people because she was directly behind the old man while the others stood behind her. The golden-robed old man seemed to have noticed something as he suddenly turned around to look at a black-clad young man standing at the very end of the group. This black-clad young man had a huge build and was very good-looking. However, it seemed like he wanted to maintain a low profile since he traveled at the end of the group. "Zhou Yi, you've made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage?" the golden-robed old man asked in shock. His eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky. As soon as the words left the old man's mouth, the blue-clad woman behind him instantly regained her senses. A hint of shock could be seen in her eyes. The remaining 8 people returned to their senses as well. Turning around one after another, they stared at the black-clad young man following behind them as though they had just seen a ghost. Martial Emperor stage. He had made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage. "Yes, Master." The black-clad young man nodded to the golden-robed old man in a manner that was neither servile nor arrogant. If any of Lost Stone Forest's people were here, they would be able to recognize the black-clad young man with just a glance. He was none other than the former direct disciple of Lost Stone Forest's Martial Emperor. He was Zhou Yi, the direct disciple Martial Emperor Shiqi doted on the most. Previously, after Zhou Yi had betrayed Martial Emperor Shiqi by committing fraud and stealing the Devil Seal tablet, he had fled Lost Stone Forest. In the end, although Martial Emperor Shiqi had searched for Zhou Yi, he realized it was too late since Zhou Yi was nowhere to be found. During that time, Zhou Yi hid in various places, afraid of being found by Martial Emperor Shiqi. It was only until recently when he heard that a Martial Emperor was recruiting Martial Emperor's disciples and followers at a place close to his whereabouts that he decided to join under this Martial Emperor. He had long heard about this Martial Emperor. He was even more powerful than Martial Emperor Shiqi. Zhou Yi easily passed the selection of the Martial Emperor's disciples and followers and successfully became the Martial Emperor's disciple, relying on the fact that he already had half a foot in the Martial Emperor stage. After he had become the Martial Emperor's disciple, he intentionally made himself stand out and attracted the attention of the Martial Emperor before becoming the Martial Emperor's direct disciple. Although he had become the Martial Emperor's direct disciple, he did not dare to act arrogant like how he did in Lost Stone Forest. Ever since he left Lost Stone Forest, he had learned how to keep a low profile. He was very clear that a poisonous snake that lurked in the shadow, poised to attack, had a longer lifespan in comparison to a vicious wolf that attacked people as it pleased. Due to this reason, he became this martial emperor's most humble direct disciple. It took the group of people by surprise now that the humble martial emperor's direct disciple had broken through to the martial emperor stage. The golden-robed old man was one of the top well-known martial emperors on Cloud Continent. His title was Lei Ming, and his strength was in no way inferior to the one in Yuhan Valley. Haha, that's great, great. Upon hearing Zhou Yi's admission of breaking through to the martial emperor stage, Martial Emperor Lei Ming laughed heartily. In this case, this means there are currently 2 martial emperor stage martial emperor's direct disciples under my, Martial Emperor Lei Ming's command now. Martial Emperor Lei Ming beamed in delight. Congratulations, Master. Congratulations, Lord Martial Emperor. At this moment, all the 9 people, including the blue-clad woman, following behind Martial Emperor Lei Ming congratulated him in unison. Many people looked at Zhou Yi enviously. They knew very well that the second Zhou Yi had broken through to the Martial Emperor stage, he would become Martial Emperor Lei Ming's most doted direct disciple. To be more precise, one of the 2 most doted on Martial Emperor's direct disciples. This was because there was another Martial Emperor under Martial Emperor Lei Ming's command. It was Lan Bai, the blue-clad woman following directly behind Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Junior brother Zhou, congratulations on your breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage. Lan Bai looked at Zhou Yi and smiled as she congratulated him. Thank you, senior sister Bai. Zhou Yi immediately thanked her. Junior brother Zhou, why are you so far behind? Don't tell me you're afraid of being eaten by Master and me. Lan Bai asked with a frown as she looked at where Zhou Yi was standing. Of course not. Zhou Yi shook his head. At this moment, Martial Emperor Lei Ming also chimed in. Zhou Yi, go stand next to your senior sister, you're a direct disciple under my, Martial Emperor Lei Ming, command. Why are you standing so far behind for? Yes, Master, Zhou Yi replied respectfully. Zhou Yi did not dare to disobey Martial Emperor Lei Ming since he still needed to rely on his protection. Although he had already broken through to the Martial Emperor stage, in regards to strength, let alone Martial Emperor Lei Ming, he was not even comparable to his former master, Martial Emperor Shiqi of Lost Stone Forest. I hope you'll be able to make me proud in the Hidden Fog martial competition. If you get a good ranking, I'll definitely treat you well, Martial Emperor Lei Ming announced unhurriedly as he looked at Zhou Yi who finally stood next to Lan Bai. Rest assured, Master, I, Zhou Yi, will definitely do my best and make you and Thundercloud Peak proud. Zhou Yi replied confidently. Thundercloud Peak was the cultivation place of Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Great, great. Upon hearing Zhou Yi's reply, Martial Emperor beamed in delight. With a raise of his hand, a narrow saber with lights revolving around it immediately appeared in his hand. You can consider this spirit saber as a congratulatory gift from me for breaking through to the Martial Emperor stage. As Martial Emperor Lei Ming spoke, he handed the spirit saber in his hand over to Zhou Yi. This, Martial Emperor Lei Ming's action took all the 9 people, including Lan Bai, by surprise. It's the spirit saber that Lord Martial Emperor always carries around with him. The spirit saber that Lord Martial Emperor always carries around with him is one of the only 2 quasi-royal grade spirit weapons in our Thundercloud Peak. The other quasi-royal grade spirit weapon has already been given to senior sister Lan Bai by Lord Martial Emperor when she made a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage a few years ago. In this case, this must be the only quasi-royal grade spirit weapon left in Lord Martial Emperor's hands. If Lord Martial Emperor gives it away, he'll have to use a grade 1 spirit weapon. Soon after, many people regained their senses and began to whisper among one another. Many people looked at Zhou Yi enviously, and some of them glared at him bitterly. Those few people in the latter group were the Martial Emperor's direct disciples. They had originally been covetously eyeing the quasi-royal grade spirit saber in Martial Emperor Lei Ming's hand. They had hoped to break through to the Martial Emperor stage as soon as possible so they could get their hands on the quasi-royal grade spirit saber. Who knew that a person who had just joined Thundercloud Peak and became the Martial Emperor's direct disciple would make a breakthrough to the Martial Emperor stage before them? Master, please don't. Junior brother Zhou only just entered our Thundercloud Peak recently. It's too dangerous to give the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon to him just like that. That's right, Master. The other 2 Martial Emperor's direct disciples hastily advised Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Their words were very obvious. They were worried Zhou Yi would leave Thundercloud Peak after obtaining the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. At that time, the quasi-royal grade spirit weapon would turn into Zhou Yi's dowry. Humph, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Martial Emperor Lei Ming snorted coldly when he heard his two direct disciples' words. Blame yourself for being such a disappointment instead. From now on, this quasi-royal grade spirit saber of mine will be Zhou Yi's spirit weapon. When Martial Emperor Lei Ming reached the end of his sentence, he looked at Zhou Yi again under the unwilling eyes of the two Martial Emperor's direct disciples. Master, senior brothers actually have a point. I think it's better if you keep this spirit saber for yourself, Master. Zhou Yi did not take the spirit saber that Martial Emperor Lei Ming handed over to him. Just take it. I've already said I'll give it to you. Although this quasi-royal grade spirit weapon is not that much powerful than a grade 1 spirit weapon, it's still better than a grade 1 spirit weapon. With this in your hands, you'll be able to display your strength better during the Hidden Fog martial competition and get a better ranking. Martial Emperor insisted on giving the quasi-royal grade spirit saber in his hand to Zhou Yi. Master, I understand your meaning, but I actually already have a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon in my hand. Even if you give your spirit saber to me, Master, there's no occasion for me to use it at all. Zhou Yi smiled. Zhou Yi's words did not only take Martial Emperor Lei Ming by surprise, but the others were also equally shocked as well. Zhou Yi had his own quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. Junior brother Zhou, you mustn't joke about this. This concerns the Hidden Fog martial competition, so don't listen to those two sarcastic remarks. To be honest, they're just jealous of you, Lan Bai chimed in as she looked at Zhou Yi, making the other two Martial Emperor's direct disciples turn a shade of green before they turned pale. They were rendered speechless for a long time. As the Martial Emperor's direct disciple at the Martial Emperor stage, Lan Bai was the strongest person in Thundercloud Peak after Martial Emperor Lei Ming. Even if the two of them joined forces, they were no match for Lan Bai. Lan Bai is right, you mustn't joke about this. Martial Emperor Lei Ming also chimed in solemnly. Master, senior sister, have a look. Zhou Yi shook his head. With a raise of his hand, a strange stone tablet appeared in his hands. The stone tablet was described as strange because it was chipped on one of the corners. Apart from the chipped corner, an array of strange words was inscribed on the stone tablet. All these words emitted an ancient aura that spoke of the vicissitudes of life. Whoosh! As Zhou Yi's origin energy surged into the strange stone tablet in his hand, the stone tablet suddenly trembled. The heaven and earth energy above the sky began to whirl. Two silhouettes of ancient black dragons appeared before they were followed by another two silhouettes of ancient black dragons. Four silhouettes of ancient black dragons contrasted finely with each other. The two silhouettes of ancient black dragons were the indicator of a first-level Martial Emperor martial artist. On the other hand, 100% boost was a sign of a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. It really is a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon. Many people lost their cool as they exclaimed in shock. Martial Emperor Lei Ming and Lan Bai finally believed him. As it turned out, Zhou Yi really did possess a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon.